Lights on. Oh. Delayed. Okay, got it. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming out. For the first hour, they're going to present the plan that they have for us to review and consider. And following that, there's a microphone where I am, and on the other side of the room, if people have questions that they want to present to them or a statement, looking at the numbers here, I would just be cognizant of the time. As many people as possible would like to be heard, I'm sure. So, guys, take it away. It's all yours. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's public information meeting on State Project 103274. We're here tonight to talk about operation and safety improvements on Route 82 in Norwich. I want to thank Kelly Steen Magnet Middle School for allowing us to have the meeting here. What a beautiful facility, and their tech people for supporting us so wonderfully tonight. And also I want to extend thanks to Mayor Nystrom for suggesting such a beautiful place to have a meeting. It's one of the nicest places I've had a public meeting in my career with DOT. So thank you, Mayor. I appreciate this. When you, let's see, get rolling here. About tonight's meeting, when you came into the room, out in the hallway, there was handouts. Everyone should have picked up. If you haven't picked up a handout, it has pretty important information on it. Try to grab one when you leave. They're right outside the door. There's also a civil rights flyer on that same table. We have a project presentation for you today. It'll be about 50 minutes. I'm going to ask you to hold your questions till the end of the presentation. We'll be doing Q&A after that. Here's the handout. The presenters are on the front of the handout. My name is Scott Bushy. I'm the project manager. Also, with my picture is all of my contact information, my phone number, my email. If you want to talk with me after the meeting, I'm accessible to you here through these contacts. A lot of you along the corridor have met us already, especially if your property is impacted, but I'm happy to meet with you at your facility, your business, your property. We can talk. Also with me tonight, I have Mike Larice, the project, and Dennis McDonald, our right-of-way coordinator, and also with us tonight, Mr. Mark Lenters. Mark's been part of our team now for about 3 years. He's a national roundabout consultant and also an expert. We brought him in about 3 years ago to vet this design. We don't have roundabout corridors elsewhere in Connecticut. This is the first one for us. He's been involved in quite a few of them across the country. He's going to share his experiences with you, share some case studies and some successes. We're glad to have him. He's also supported this location as being suitable for roundabout corridor. He's vetted the design, capacity analysis, and we're happy to have him with us here tonight. Also tonight we have Mr. Matt Vale sitting at the table over there. He's the lead of our state highway design unit for in-house state design. On the back of the handout is Matt's contact information. So if you want to write to him, inside your handout, there's a paper pullout. You can write your comments on that paper pullout, fold it, put a stamp on it. It's already addressed to Matt. Comments will go to him. If you prefer to send an email, the email address is on the back of the handout as well. You don't have to write it down. It's right there. In addition, we have other project information and resources at the project website. That's on the bottom of the handout as well, and there's a QR code that goes with it to bring you right there. That will get you digital copies of the handouts. Eventually will be a recording of tonight's meeting will be posted on that website. We also have surveys available on that website, and there's going to be a video of the project visualization available on that website too. So that's a good follow-up resource to look at in the next couple days for more information. A little bit of housekeeping information. Okay, there's a demographic survey available on that website also. civil rights flyers on the table when you came in the room. No person shall, on the basis of race, color, national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. A little more housekeeping. Tonight's public information meeting is also inclusive of the SEPA scoping process. SEPA stands for the Connecticut Environmental Policy Act and is a process to identify and review actions that may have a significant effect on the environment. The opportunity for the public to leave feedback is one of the most important components of the SEPA process. While reviewing a project under SEPA, we are required to consider both direct and indirect impacts that a project may have on environmental resources. Everything including cultural resources, air quality, wetlands, and compliance with the State Plan of Conservation Development are considered. Since this project also involves federal funding, we will also ensure compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act. The scoping process begins when we publish notice of project in Environmental Monitor, which is an online publication run by the Connecticut Council of Environmental Quality. The scoping notice was published on June 7th with a comment period ending on July 8th. Scoping comments are solicited from the state regulatory agencies as well as various municipalities and the public. Feedback to help identify potential alternatives, environmental resources need to be analyzed in the project area. Local communities often know the area the best, making tonight's meeting critical. This project was chosen for a SEPA review due to community concern and the extent of private property acquisitions. Ultimately, this process will help us determine if there is a need for an environmental impact evaluation. An environmental impact evaluation is a comprehensive document that analyzes significant environmental impacts of the project or project alternatives. Once a decision is made regarding the need for an environmental impact evaluation, that determination will be published in the Environmental Monitor along with a synopsis of the comments received and our responses. If anyone's interested in additional information related to SEPA, please send me an email or call me. My number's on the front cover of the handout, and I'll get you a lot more information on it. Okay, so for tonight's presentation, we're focusing on Route 82, primarily between I-395 and downtown Norwich. We're going to be focusing primarily on Phase 1, highlighted in yellow. This location has been brought to the 30% design level, and that's when we usually come out and get feedback from the community. It's still very early in the design, and we're here to get your thoughts, your comments, and try to incorporate that into the project as we move ahead. The remainder of the area in the red circle would be Phase 2, and that's still in concept level design. Shown on this picture is Route 82. All the yellow circles indicate curb cuts. Those are driveways, most of them commercial businesses. Some of the businesses have 2 driveways. Traffic traveling on Route 82, 4 lanes, making left turns into the driveways, often backs up traffic in the through lane while they're sitting to make a left turn. Vehicles trying to get out of the driveways have a difficulty exiting the driveways. They have to get gaps in traffic in both directions to be able to make a left turn. In addition to be both directions, it's 4 lanes. These maneuvers often result in sideswipe type crashes, rear ends, people getting frustrated, poor traffic operations as traffic backs up behind a left turning vehicle. In addition to the high number of curb cuts along that section of roadway, we also have 7 closely spaced traffic signals. And again, we're here tonight to look at Phase 1, 103274. That's the easterly portion of the work, mostly running from the Asylum Mechanic Street area, and will extend up through Dunham Street. This is your community. You live here, you drive it every day. These are the things that you see. Traffic congestion, pedestrians having difficulty crossing the roadway, vehicles wanting to make a left turn, having a hard time getting a gap, making that maneuver. Down by Asylum Street, more the same thing. Pedestrians crossing the roadway with a very long crossing distance exposed to traffic. Vehicles wanting to make a left turn, stuck in in a very congested intersection. Vehicles wanting to pull out of a commercial driveway, having a hard time finding a gap. Weaving, vehicles in the left lane, trying to get around a left-turning vehicle. Here's a video of the mechanic at the Silent Street intersection. It's your community, you guys see this, but just some reminders of what happens. This pickup truck change lanes. That often results in side swipe maneuvers, the weaving. That's very common. This SUV, he wants to make a left turn, but he can't. And he's getting impatient because he keeps inching up. He's getting closer to the light, but he hasn't executed his turn. And this truck, he wants to make a left turn also. He can't find a gap. Here's another one going to execute a weaving maneuver soon and pull out into the right lane. The black SUV, he still hasn't made his left turn. He's waiting. Finally, the SUV, he makes his left turn on a red light. At Willows Corner, Dollar General, commercial driveway. Pretty indicative of any of the driveways along the corridor. A vehicle waiting to make his left turn. Can't get a gap in traffic. He needs a gap in both directions to be able to make his turn. He's got a large number of traffic going eastbound. Can't find a gap. He's waiting. Everybody's kind of got a tolerance to how long they'll wait before they start to become impatient, think about taking gaps that they normally wouldn't. He had a gap eastbound, now he doesn't have one with westbound traffic. And this is part of the reason we didn't consider a two-way left turn lane in the middle of the road. You just have an extra lane to cross to get into your desired direction to make the turn. Finally, he gets to make his turn. 65-second wait. But you guys live here. This is your community. You drive this every day. On average, this section of roadway has 135 injuries annually. 40% of them occur at the unsignalized driveways. 60% occur at the traffic signals. In addition to that, studies we've reviewed showed 15 bicycle and pedestrian related crashes. 14 of the 15 people got injured. Some of those people went to the hospital. Those are your friends, your family, your neighbors. We need a safety improvement. Looking at some more metrics, data, we're looking at driveways along the corridor, some crash data. It shows vehicles pulling out of Bank of America here, and a lot of angle crashes involving these left turn vehicles at these curb cuts. Any of the driveways we look at along the corridor would have similar types of crashes. Looking at the intersection down at Osgood, a lot of angle crashes shown here in red. We have pattern crashes here with rear ends. This one shows 10 rear end crashes at this single location going westbound, 5 rear end crashes going eastbound. Most of these intersections all have similar types of crashes. Looking at Mechanic Street, Asylum, 45 crashes with 18 injuries in a 5-year period. Again, pattern crashes. These are the rear ends. We've got 6 rear end crashes going westbound, 11 rear end crashes going eastbound. The more severe ones are the angled crashes in the middle of the intersection. There's 5 of them coming off Asylum, 4 of them coming off Mechanic. These are the ones where people typically get hurt. And then there's a solution. To improve operation and safety, a median down the middle of the roadway restricts left-turning vehicles. That means when you're traveling on Route 82, all turns will be right turns. You turn right into the driveway you want to go in. If the driveway's on the other side, you go down the roundabout, make a U-turn, go in. In addition, Phase 1 is going to have a road diet. That means it will go from a 4-lane roadway to a 2-lane roadway, 1 lane in each direction. This shows how you would execute the U-turn to make a left, go down to the roundabout, go into your desired location. You don't have to stop and wait at a traffic signal. There's no waiting at a light. You don't have to stop in the left lane waiting for a gap in traffic while people pile up behind you, maybe worried about getting rear-ended. It's very simple. Go down to the roundabout, make a U-turn, go back, make a right. 1 lane in each direction. All turns are right turns. There's no crossing maneuvers. We've built these type of safety features in other locations. We know they can work. They can work locally, and nationally there's data on them. The raised median, we know we can reduce turning crashes by 78%, injuries related to turning vehicles by 95%, and with the construction of the roundabouts at the intersections, we can reduce total crashes by 48% and severe injuries by 78%. With this type of proposal. One of our biggest successes, and also locally to you guys, Salem, Connecticut, Route 82 and 85, roundabout was constructed there back around 2012. I was part of the design team that led that project. Looking at the metrics years later, we found out it was a huge success. That intersection before construction had 23 crashes annually with 9 injuries every year. Almost 23 crashes, 9 injuries, people getting hurt. After we put the roundabout in, the crashes dropped 50%. Went down to 10 crashes with almost no injuries. It's a 90% reduction in injuries with the roundabout. And the reason is the reduced speeds and removing the crossing maneuvers. There's no left turns, there's no crossing maneuvers. The crashes that occur at roundabouts, most of the time they're avoidable because people are going so slow, they can tap the brake and avoid the person that was coming at them. If there is a crash, it's usually a minor fender bender, as opposed to somebody getting hurt. But the good news is, we reduce crashes completely by 50%. And it operates very well. If you look at traffic, there's a lot of traffic flowing here. With roundabouts, you have concurrent movements going on all legs at the same time. These guys are coming in, going northbound, you have southbound traffic going, you have eastbound traffic going, all concurrently. Nobody's waiting at the light. They're all moving. It's improved efficiency.
The Connecticut Department of Transportation is investing in safety improvements on Route 82 in the city of Norwich. Today, the existing 4-lane corridor experiences higher than average crash rates following decades of commercial development and the addition of numerous driveways. The high number of access points makes it difficult for drivers to navigate in or out of driveways safely and efficiently. Utilizing historical traffic data and modern design software, the department has developed a proposal for operation and safety improvements. The proposed corridor solution involves replacing 7 traffic signals with 6 modern roundabouts in addition to a raised median down the center of Route 82. Phase 1 of the project is to be completed first and will include the construction of 3 single-lane roundabouts along the eastern half of the corridor. The combination of roundabouts with a raised median will provide the most significant improvement in terms of safety for all roadway users. This design will provide a higher level of mobility to the businesses in the corridor with its efficient, free-flowing traffic features. The Phase 1 design will reduce the lanes down from 4 to 2, known as a road diet, further enhancing safety. Landscaping throughout the corridor will enhance the environment and create a more appealing experience for the Norwich community. Native plantings will be placed in the center island of each roundabout. Roundabouts will provide safer pedestrian crossing with less interruption to traffic. and convenient U-turn capability for drivers looking to access local businesses. The rear wheels of a tractor-trailer truck will be able to mount the center island truck apron as needed to navigate the roundabout, while buses and other smaller vehicles will be accommodated within the limits of the paved circulating lane. The raised median on Route 82 will restrict left turns into and out of driveways. There will be an expected decrease in total turning crashes by about 78% and decrease injuries from crashes by nearly 95%. This change in conjunction with the new roundabouts will aid in traffic calming, slowing speeds through the corridor, promoting a safer environment for drivers and pedestrians alike. Despite slower speeds, there's a projected 25% reduction in travel time due to the removal of inherent delays associated with traffic signals. The entire Phase 1 corridor will incorporate 5-foot outside shoulders to accommodate bicyclists traveling along Route 82. The redesign of Route 82 will provide aesthetic enhancement and a more efficient corridor, creating a safer environment for motorized and non-motorized users alike.
So everything I discussed, that could happen in your community. Just a quick look at what it could be like. So, and now Mike Larice, the project engineer, he'll go through some more of the detailed design with you.
Thanks, Scott. So, as mentioned, the improvements on Route 82, the full movements, will they'll involve replacing 7 traffic signals with 6 roundabouts. Because of how big of a project that would be, we decided to split it up into 2 separate projects. Phase 1 is in blue, Phase 2 is in yellow, and then this green area just represents a location where there's going to be work done during both phases of the project. So tonight's meeting is going to be just Phase 1, like Scott mentioned, we're at like 30% design, whereas Phase 2 is still on the concept level. So this is our proposal. It's 3 single-lane roundabouts, as well as a turnaround at the Dunham Street Route 82 intersection, which I'll cover a little bit more later. In addition, we have a raised median along all of Route 82, which is going to restrict left turns, and any vehicles that need to access a business or a residential property on the other side of the road can make a U-turn at the roundabout. So I'm going to go over each one of these intersections in a little bit more detail, but I did want to cover some benefits of roundabouts first. So these diagrams show conflict points at the existing Route 82 intersection and compares it to our proposed roundabout. So all of these little dots, they represent a point where 2 vehicles could hit each other and there could be an accident. The red ones in particular are crossing conflicts, and they have the highest chance for injuries. Those are your T-bone accidents. The existing intersections at Route 82, total of 40 conflict types, or conflict points, whereas at the roundabouts, you're only going to have 8, and more importantly, you're going to remove all of those crossing conflicts. And that's why we see such a safety benefit when we install these roundabouts. The design is going to accommodate large vehicles very well. As you can see in the video up here, tractor trailers can mount the center truck apron in order to make all of their turns. And the diameter of the roundabout is going to be large enough that buses and fire trucks can navigate through the roundabout while staying on the paved surface. If there was any type of emergency, though, that truck apron is mountable, and an ambulance or a fire truck would be able to mount it and get where they needed to go. Bicycles and pedestrians are going to be accommodated very well. We expect speeds through the roundabout to be 15 to 25 miles per hour. Bicyclists are going to have 2 options. They can either, as they enter the roundabout, they can join traffic and navigate through the roundabout concurrently with traffic, just like you see in this picture. Or if they're not comfortable doing that, when they get to this crosswalk here, they can just dismount and walk their bike down the sidewalk, across the crosswalk, and continue through that way. Pedestrians are going to do something similar. They can walk down the sidewalk, cross the crosswalk, and continue on their way. One benefit that pedestrians are going to have is they're going to have a much shorter unprotected crossing distance. So if you were going to try to cross at the Asylum Street intersection right now, it'd be about a 55-foot crossing, whereas with our proposed design, you're only going to have to cross 19 feet, and then you're going to have that center island refuge area where you can safely wait and then cross the next 19-foot section when there's a gap in traffic. This is a side-by-side simulation comparing the existing intersection to our proposed design. This is the same amount of traffic at the same time of day, and you can see how well the roundabout accommodates the design. There's very little backup, whereas at the intersection, whether you have a red light or whether you have a green light and people waiting to turn left, there's a lot of traffic backup on both sides of the road. And again, this is the same amount of traffic going through the simulation. So you can see how Roundabout performs much better. From an environmental standpoint, as you saw in the previous video and on this video down here on the right, there's not a lot of stop and go traffic at roundabouts. It's much more of a rolling queue. Vehicles are constantly moving. That reduces the vehicle delay, but it also reduces the amount of emissions that are put into the air by vehicles, and it also simultaneously increases your fuel efficiency. And then there's the fact that roundabouts don't require electricity to work, whereas traffic signals do. So another inherent environmental benefit. So I'm going to go into each intersection now in a little bit more detail, starting with the Asylum Street Route 82 intersection. So existing, it's signalized. Elizabeth Street is a one-way road running away from Route 82. And as I bring in the design here, we have a legend on the bottom right, but all the green is going to be grassed area and landscaped, as you can see in the picture up here. On both sides of the road, the light gray is 5-foot sidewalk, and the red is that raised median that I mentioned previously. And this tan is the mountable truck apron to be used by tractor trailers. So one thing I did want to mention on this slide is this 5-foot sidewalk that you see on both sides of the road. That's going to be the same at all the intersections, as well as consistent throughout the entire project limits. In an effort to make sure that this intersection operated safely and efficiently, we did decide to cut off Elizabeth Street's access to Route 82. It was one way. We made it a two-way road, and anyone trying to access Route 82 can come down to Peck Street and take Mechanic Street to Route 82. As we continue west down the corridor, our next proposed roundabout is at the intersection of Mount Pleasant and Route 82. As I bring in the design, you can see we have the sidewalks on both sides of the road. One thing I wanted to mention at this intersection is there is an existing bus shelter right here on the eastern side that will be relocating to the western side of the roundabout. Just because we were able to widen out the shoulder to 8 feet here. So if a bus is coming down, instead of stopping here and blocking this pedestrian crossing, they can come through the roundabout, pull over into the shoulder, pick up people, and everyone else in the roundabout can continue through uninterrupted. The third and final roundabout for Phase 1 is at the intersection of Osgood Street and Route 82. The thing I want to highlight at this intersection is the entrances to the Westgate Plaza. There's this easternmost one here, and then there's this one, which is going to be right where our proposed roundabout is. So as I bring in the proposed design, you'll see that this entrance is going to get relocated down to the bottom of Crane Avenue. So as I bring in the design, you can see that entrance is no longer there, so anyone who does this eastern entrance, they can come down through the roundabout and enter down in Crane Ave. So I've covered these three roundabouts, and we're going to continue west now to this Dunham Street intersection that I mentioned previously. This is in that green area where there's going to be work done during both phases of the project. As I bring in the design, you'll see that this intersection is going to remain signalized. So vehicles coming down westbound on 82 can come into this left turn lane, and then they can either turn left on Dunham Street, or they can make a U-turn maneuver and come down 82 eastbound. And during Phase 2, this is going to become a roundabout at this intersection, but in between the two projects, we needed to ensure that vehicles traveling west on 82 could make this U-turn maneuver and access businesses on the other side of the road. There are some impacted properties with the proposed design. We're planning on 5 total acquisitions. The first one is going to be at the intersection we were just talking about. We'll be acquiring an Extramart/Shell gas station. At the intersection of Osgood Street and Route 82, we plan on acquiring a barbershop/apartment building. And then at the intersection of Asylum Street and Route 82, we're acquiring 3 commercial businesses in order to accommodate the roundabout design. We also have 44 partial acquisitions or slope easements associated with the design. And at this point, I'd like to pass the presentation over to Dennis, and he's going to cover the right-of-way process in a little bit more detail.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dennis McDonald. As Mike mentioned, I'm a representative from the Connecticut Department of Transportation Division of Rights-of-Way. I'm just going to provide a brief overview of the right-of-way process. So the function of the Division of Rights-of-Way is to acquire all property and property rights necessary for the project. This is done in accordance with the various statutes and regulations, including Connecticut General Statute Sections 13A73, 13A98E, as well as the Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Policies Act of 1970 as amended. So once the right-of-way process is set to begin, each impacted property owner will receive a letter of intent to acquire, along with a property acquisition map. The letter provides a brief overview of the process, and the map provides a detailed visual representation of the specific property impacts. Soon after the letter and map are received or sent, a valuation process will take place, and once a value has been established, a written offer of compensation will be presented to each property owner. Property owners will be given time to consider the offer and negotiate if they wish. If an agreement is reached, an acceptance document would be signed, and a closing would take place at a later date. If an agreement cannot be reached for whatever reason, the state will acquire the property rights via the condemnation process. Now, I understand this has a negative connotation, but many times this is done to keep a project on schedule. If the state does elect to pursue eminent domain, the original offer is deposited in the court system available for withdrawal, and property owners can continue negotiations or file a formal appeal for a reassessment of damages through the court system. If a property owner elects to file an appeal, it must be done within 6 months from the date in which the state files for eminent domain. So in addition to payments for the property rights, displaced persons and businesses are also entitled to certain relocation benefits. Those benefits include advisory services. So each displaced person or business will be working with a representative from my office from beginning to end, and that person will assist in identifying replacement properties, assist with filing claims for payment of relocation benefits, and anything else that may be needed to successfully complete the relocation process. Additional benefits include moving and related expenses. For residential displacees, owner-occupants, or tenants, a replacement housing payment is a benefit which would assist with the purchase or lease of a replacement property. And for displaced businesses, a business reestablishment benefit is also available, which assists those displaced businesses setting up their new location, such as carpeting, paint, any improvements to the actual real estate. And that's essentially the process in summary. At this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mark Lenters to dive a little deeper into roundabout corridors. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. My name is Mark Lenters. I'm with Kimley Horn out of Atlanta. I spent the last 5 years there working with the Department of Transportation to help them grow a roundabout program. Prior to that, I was 10 years in the state of Wisconsin and worked all over the U.S. With agencies like Connecticut DOT that aspire to solving safety problems using modern roundabouts. And for about the past 20 years, I've worked on over 1,000 roundabout projects and in the range of about 30 or 40 roundabout corridors. I want to talk a bit about roundabout corridors tonight. I've worked on some research nationally. In 2014, there was a study of 9 corridors. At that time, there was an inventory of roughly 58 corridors of roundabouts, a corridor being 3 or more roundabouts in a series, spaced anywhere from hundreds of feet to thousands of feet apart. Some of them are in commercial corridors, some of them are in suburban areas, but they all share one thing in common in that they replaced traffic signals or stop control intersections, and in the majority of cases, they were safety improvements. So with that study in 2014, we conducted interviews, did travel time studies, looked at economic impacts and the benefits in terms of safety, and then impacts included cost, safety, property value, environment, travel time, and so on. And the research is entitled NCHRP 772, Roundabouts and Corridors. So some of the considerations I want to focus on in particular, because in my background, I was an access manager for a county. I was a county traffic engineer for the early part of my career, and the toolbox was very shallow. When we had safety problems in a corridor, similar to what has been described tonight, we had very few countermeasures except to divide the roadway and cut off access. And that would mitigate the left turn crashes and the driveway egress crashes. But that would also starve business of access. So when roundabouts came along in the 1990s, the first roundabout corridors, one was in Avon, Colorado. We closely monitored, those of us in this practice area of roundabouts, closely monitored the impacts to see if we could solve not only the safety problem, but improve access and improve business opportunities. And that turned out to be a good news case right from the beginning. So we looked at some of the hard and soft measures, land use considerations, access management, and tax-based considerations. I'm going to take you through a few case studies that are quite notable from around the country in no particular area, but they all have something in common, and that's they have roundabout corridors in some of their most important business corridors. And some of these measures that we looked at were livability and walkability, property value, some more softer things like aesthetics and placemaking. Placemaking is a big factor in supporting business. People want to come to a place, walk, get out of their cars. Community acceptance, of course, social equality and transportation equity, as we are so interested in these days, that all users of the road system get equal access. And so I'll walk you through alone. So my main talking point is you are not alone. This is not an experiment for Norwich. This is not something new that hasn't been done before. And because it's been done successfully, the department has looked abroad for this kind of experience to come and support them, to help them develop this project in a way that not only solves the safety problems, but is very attentive to the business needs of the community. So in New York DOT, they looked at Malta, New York, replacing stop control and signal controlled intersections, including ramp terminals at interchanges with modern roundabouts. And the spacing, there's no particular formula. These are just retrofits to existing conditions. So in another site in Maryland, not so far away, public and stakeholders generally had a positive reaction to the roundabouts initially, and others were added to the corridor. And that seems to be the general response we see. This one, a little farther to the west and south, San Diego, La Jolla Boulevard, was a real standout because they were suffering from this problem of too much pavement, problems with parking, problems with business access, long crossing distances, and safety issues. So when they ventured into the roundabout options, you could see in 2005, there were some business impacts in terms of revenue and tax-based growth, but in the years that followed, heavy investment in the corridor. Reinvestment, redevelopment, sustainable, and then of course we saw the recession closing in on 2010. Other businesses signed longer leases because of the viability of that corridor improved significantly with the use of roundabouts. Sorry, I jumped one ahead. And you can see the use of a median to separate and to beautify some of the corridor areas. They actually went for angle parking, and even though it was a road diet, they provided some additional amenities to support business growth. Golden, Colorado was another standout, 2002. So we've seen 20 years of the effect of converting force signals to modern roundabouts, 60% drop in crashes, 90% drop in injuries, and one of the most notable things was the 85th percentile speed, or the speed at which at least 85% of the drivers operate, was reduced from 48 to 33 miles per hour. But the interesting story is the travel time actually went down. So speeds went down, so you'd think it would take longer to travel through the corridor, but it actually took less time to travel through the corridor, even at lower speed, because the intersection congestion was reduced. And that's the same thing that you're counting on for this kind of a corridor. So very typical commercial strip commercial corridor, multiple business types and uses, banks, fast food plazas, front commercial, service commercial, all of them depending on roadway access for their viability. The division of the roadway was organized and planned to essentially create U-turn opportunities for some of the smaller businesses, and some of the anchors were given direct access. But essentially, the access was organized so that they could improve safety and get that 60% drop in crashes that I commented on. So you can see a sea of pavement on the left in the original design with the two-way left turn lane, sometimes called a suicide lane. Traffic having to make stage left turns, come out into the center, stop, wait for a gap, and go was inherently unsafe. And in the after case, you see a landscaped, beautified corridor with better setbacks for crosswalks. So a much improved pedestrianized environment. So in the after condition, a vibrant community. Now 20 years since, traffic flows have increased. They're not exceeding the capacity of the roundabouts, but they've experienced more exposure for the businesses. And then a 60% increase in retail sales. So again, you can see some of the effect of access that's indiscriminate or not organized for safer movements between properties, and certainly not for pedestrians. And then the slower operating environment associated with roundabouts makes ingress and egress at driveways much more predictable and uniform. So inherently, it's going to be safer. This was the one I referred to earlier. The first roundabout corridor in North America was Avon. Actually, my predecessor, Leif Auerston, worked on that corridor in 1995. The residents of the community actually asked for an increase in their tax base to fund the sculptures in the roundabouts and to accelerate the project. So it was fast-tracked. The signals were replaced in very tight spacing, and the medians were added, the U-turns were added. This is Beaver Creek here, and I-70 from Grand Junction to Denver, where skiers get off on weekends, and you can imagine the congestion. So these are two-lane roundabouts, but the access was upheld and much safer in terms of overall corridor operations. And so how did they fare in terms of taxes? So they saw a steady increase up to about the recession from 04 to 09. And then in the years 14 to 19, this is the data I could get readily off the internet, the sales tax revenue in retail and accommodation, of course, hotels, just a steady increase. And because Avon Road is the main spine for the town of Avon, if that wasn't working for them, they wouldn't realize this kind of tax base increase in retail and commercial benefit. This next one, up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, so where I spent 10 years, I worked on a corridor project with US 41 where we constructed 41 roundabouts in about 7 years at all the interchanges right around Green Bay Packers Stadium and up and down the section of 41. But this community called Neenah asked for roundabouts in a corridor, and by 2017, they had 3 and then a 4th one over to the right. And they divided the roadway. Access was so problematic it didn't matter if they could get access because it was unsafe anyway. So the medians helped with the U-turn opportunities, and I think there's a little video clip here. But in the 2 years after, unplanned, unorganized, $13 million was invested by the local business operators between the plazas, outbuildings with McDonald's and different small banks and operators, gas stations, etc. They saw the benefit of that. So in summary, corridors have been converted for economic benefit. This one, the conversion is really for safety and operations. But that's the good news story, that when you do a safety project, you're going to get that economic opportunity as well. Roundabouts and corridors promote sustainable safety. That's safety that doesn't require additional intervention. No more red light cameras, very little speed radar enforcement. It's self-sustaining because just by nature of the roundabout slowing traffic, it creates a safer environment. And as I mentioned before, it's not an experiment. It's been done before sufficiently in number of times that we know that this is going to be a success for you. Scott?
Back to Norwich, guys. We've been working with the city for several years on this project. We've been to several council meetings. We've met with Public Works quite a few times, a lot of business owners along the corridor. We've been listening. One of the common themes we've heard for the past 5 years, minimize traffic impacts during construction. We've thought about ways to do that, ways to mitigate those types of delays, inefficiencies. We have a few proposals for you tonight that we're planning. One of them involves early utility relocations. This is something that's available to us, we can do. We have utility poles that have to get moved with the project. We jump in, move those before the highway contractor starts, then we don't have two contractors occupying the same space trying to work. We also wouldn't have the roadway contractor waiting for the utility company to come out and move a pole, so things can move much more efficiently. Another concept we have, we can work on and write our contract such that we work on a single intersection at a time. And that doesn't mean complete it, but that means get it into roundabout mode, get it substantially complete. Maybe it doesn't have final pavement, but the idea would be, so we're not working on all three intersections concurrently. If you're driving the corridor, you may get delayed at one intersection, but we don't want you to drive the corridor and have delay, then another delay at another intersection, and delay at another intersection. And I think that's what you've been asking us. Try to avoid that. Another plan that we have, and DOT's been doing this quite frequently, especially in urban projects, it works very well. We're going to hire a community business liaison and also put up a project website during construction. The project website will have information about the construction progress of the project, how it's moving ahead, what the future plans are, kind of a look ahead. It would be something where you could go on and see what DOT is looking at for the next few weeks. Where are we going to be working along the corridor? What types of activities we're going to do? That could be found on the website. The community business liaison, that's a person all the property owners and business owners, municipal leaders could get to know. And it's a two-way street. You know, we could get feedback from you guys, what's not working, what's working, what your needs are. But one of the biggest benefits with that person is just going out and talking with business owners and letting them know, hey, we're working along the corridor in 2 weeks. We're probably going to get to your driveway, and I'd like to hear from you. When do you get your deliveries? What type of vehicle brings your deliveries? And that type of discussion and feedback will help us better plan our work to accommodate those business needs and help that business owner understand what's coming. Along the same lines, at several council meetings, we've been asked to consider as much night work as possible so that the roadway is not interrupted during the day. It's kind of a delicate balance because there are some residential properties in the area and you do have noise from night work. But there are certain activities that would be a couple of nights apiece here and there that we think we could do at night, and it would help with traffic disruption during the day. One of those is setting curbing. The granite curbing we're going to set occupies a lot of equipment and work within the roadway, and it causes interruption. Another one is pouring of concrete. We've got medians, stamped concrete medians we got to pour, stamped concrete truck aprons. The concrete delivery truck shows up on the job. It's got a big chute. The concrete's got to come out of it. He's usually parked in the road, occupies a lot of space. If we could do some of that at night, it would also help minimize traffic impacts during the day. And milling and paving, something that we routinely do at night, we certainly could do here. But I have to thank the city of Norwich. We've been working with Public Works quite a bit on the project over the past few years, and they've been gracious enough to suggest that they believe the city of Norwich would allow us to do road closures on the side streets for 2 weeks at a time. And this would help us quite a bit and be able to build the project efficiently. And it doesn't mean close the entire street. We're talking about just closing the interface at Route 82. And the good news is these side streets have such a grid network. If Osgood is closed, you can go down here and use Beckwith and come back around. It's a very minor inconvenience that has a big gain. If we don't have to maintain traffic here, that means the contractor can much more efficiently work to set curbing, build stormwater drainage, some of the larger construction activities, and try to get all that work done significantly within that 2-week road closure. It would help us expedite construction significantly. It also removes side street traffic from the intersection while we're trying to work. So that would be a big savings in efficiency moving ahead. And same thing on the eastern end of the project. You're down by Mechanic and Ann Street. You know, there's Mechanic and Asylum Street. There's local workarounds there for traffic. You know, passenger cars certainly will use Ann Street. Truck traffic, I would expect, could come down Newton Street and then onto New London Turnpike to access Route 82 if you had some larger vehicles. But the point is, there's a pretty extensive grid network that runs along Route 82 that for short-term durations, 2 weeks at a time or so, these avenues could be used. And it would help us accelerate construction quite a bit. The cost of our project was estimated at $20 million. It's funded with 80% federal funds, 20% state. Bids would go out in fall of 2024. We'd also look to start the utility work around that time. So you would see some contractors working out there. There'd be utility contractors moving the poles, hopefully work through the fall, winter, and into the spring. In the spring of 25, our roadway contractor would get started and work for 2 construction seasons. Construction seasons, April through November, and that's where most of the heavy highway work would happen. There may be a little work through the winter during the 2026 year too, but predominantly most of the road work happens during April through November. And again, you know, this is the safety solution that could help a lot out here, the roundabouts with the raised medians. Tonight's meeting focuses predominantly on phase 1. We did give you some information that's kind of an awareness of what's being discussed for phase 2. This one is just in concept design. We haven't taken that too far. But at 30% design, we're still very early in the design process on this one. And we're here to get your feedback and your comments. The construction schedule for phase 1 starts in 2025. We'll go through 2026. The proposal is when that's complete in the fall of 26, spring of 27, phase 2 would start, and that would last 2 years as well. So phase 1 would be complete 26, 27, start phase 2. There will be a separate public information meeting for phase 2, probably in 18 to 24 months, and we'll focus more on the design efforts for that section at that time. And just one last indicator of your community. Boy. This is what we could do. It's a quick summary. Nobody waiting, idling vehicles, improved efficiency through the corridor. In another state, they estimated 24,000 gallons of gas saved per roundabout per year. 25% reduction in travel time along the corridor because you don't have to stop at traffic signals. Better accommodations for bicycles, for everyone. We can improve safety. By implementing the raised medians, we can reduce crashes by 78%. By implementing the roundabouts, we know we can reduce crashes by at least 48–50%, and severe crashes by at least 78% based on national data. And now we'll move into the question and answer session. I want to thank everyone for your patience and holding your questions to the end. There's 2 microphones up in the audience area, one on each aisle. I'm going to ask that we use those for facilitating the question and answer. If you have a question, please ask it in this process tonight with the microphones. We're not going to speak with people one-on-one after the meeting, just for our safety and your safety. But I do want to remind everyone, my contact information is on the front of the handout. Again, my name is Scott Bushy. My phone number is there. My email is there. I'm accessible to you. If you want, I can come out to your property. I can discuss where the edge of road's going to be, your driveway, parking spaces, anything like that, any specific questions you might have to your specific property that may be best handled one-on-one. So let's start the Q&A.
My name is Steve Cohen. I'm a property owner on, it's 684 West Main Street, the old gas station I just knocked down. It's good to see you, Scott. A couple questions for you. Mark Lenters, question for you. You mentioned a couple of examples on the West Coast. I lived out there for 15 years, and so my question for you is how wide was the road in San Diego that you used as an example, and how wide is our road here on Route 2?
The width of the pavement on the La Jolla Boulevard was 68 feet. And that's slightly wider than the corridor here. This Route 82 doesn't have a center two-way left turn lane, and La Jolla Boulevard had 4 lanes plus a two-way left turn lane, so a total of 68 feet.
Okay, so it proves my point. You got to realize the roads out west were designed like 30 years ago or 50 years ago. The roads here in New England were designed 300 years ago. It's a lot different. You're coming to Norwich, telling the people of Norwich, hey, you have a problem, and we're here to solve it. Did anybody from the city of Norwich come to you, anybody at the state, and say, please help us? We have people getting hit by cars. Please come help us. Did that ever happen?
The answer is yes.
Okay.
This section of roadway has been studied by the city, the state, and the regional planning agency for the last 20 years. And locally, it's been known as Crash Alley. There's been a lot of studies done, crash analysts prepared, and alternatives investigated. And back in 2005, one of the tools we had in the toolbox at the time to try to address safety here might have been to put in a two-way left turn lane. Like Mark said, a suicide lane down the middle of the road. And that was done in Colorado. He showed that they did that, and then they realized it didn't work, and they came back and they put the roundabouts in. And one of the reasons we didn't build it back in the early 2000s is because we realized you weren't going to get the safety benefits out of it. You'd be adding an additional lane of traffic that people have to cross coming out of the driveways. It would be very, very minor benefit for the amount of money you'd have to spend to accommodate that level of widening. With that amount of widening would be substantial in property impacts as well, because you're adding another lane to the roadway.
Thank you, Scott. Back to the width of the road, my question is back again. I was really not referring to the width of the road itself, but where those lights are in San Diego, I mean, you're talking 3 lanes on either side. They're at least 100 feet long at the intersection where they put the left-hand turn lanes. Did we study left-hand turn lanes here? No, I don't mean all the way through the median, because that is a suicide lane. I agree with you. But at the lights themselves. The issue I'm having is that you're at my corner, and almost all these corners are not California corners. We've been, lots of people here have traveled to California. You can't just nationally come over here to Norwich and do the same concept and think it's going to work.
Well, that's why I showed you examples in Maryland, in New York. There's examples in Wisconsin and other places where there's narrow rights of way and limited access. Adding turn lanes to the intersections would solve some of the intersection congestion and safety, because you wouldn't have rear ends, people rear-ending left turners, but it still wouldn't mitigate the problem of mid-block access. When you have spacing of access that's indiscriminate with regard to whether it lines up for opposing movements, it's very difficult to exit and see where the other driver is going to go and how quickly, whose turn it is to enter the roadway. Anyone that's driven a corridor like that understands, how difficult it is to get out of driveways. So the intersection left turns wouldn't solve the root issue.
Okay, well, just 2 quick questions. Have you thought of maybe do phase 1 and then wait 15 years and see if it works? Because like I said, this is Norwich. These roads were designed 300 years ago. Maybe do phase 1 and give us 20 years and see if it works. I mean, I don't even know, what is the statistic for how many people have died on this road in the past 15 years? Has anyone died?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't give you the exact number off the top of my head, but yes, as a matter of fact, when I was coming out to meet with the city one day, we passed a motorcycle crash that was a fatality. on my way to City Hall. And there have been fatalities. 100 crashes, 35 injuries a year in this area, it's pretty substantial. I drove this corridor tonight on my way here, and at least 4 times between New London Turnpike and Asylum, I got stuck behind somebody who was trying to make a left turn. Cars were piling up behind me, and people are pulling into the right lane to weave around me.
But these are at the lights or in
No,
between
these
the
are-
lights?
These are at the driveways.
Right, but you're talking about rotaries here, which are at the lights. But the real problem is not at the rotaries at the lights. It's in between these driveways.
So we have 40% of the crashes at the driveways. That's for the reason for the raised median. The raised median eliminates left turns. All turns will be right turns once you put the raised median in. You won't have people stopped in the left lane waiting to make a left turn. Once you put in the raised medians, we need to address safety at the traffic signals, and the solution there is a roundabout. It also allows for U-turns so people can access the driveways.
Okay, thank you, and please consider Phase 1 and wait 15 years for Phase 2. But thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. I'm going to alternate sides of the room just to give respect to everyone, and thank you for being neighborly. This woman over here has been waiting patiently. Your turn, please.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I live off of, a side street off of Route 82. And my street is used for a cut-through all the time for people that don't want to wait at the traffic lights. So my question is, what's the permanent solution for people that don't want to deal with the roundabouts and are going to increase side street traffic to get around, dealing with the roundabouts? No one, observes the speed limits. No one observes the stop signs on my street. What's going to be done as a permanent fix to help us residents that live on these little narrow side streets to deal with traffic that wants to avoid the roundabouts?
The concern that you have about traffic wanting to avoid the roundabouts would be very minimal, more than likely hardly noticeable, if at all. Once people realize they can travel the corridor 25% more efficiently, they don't have to wait at the light, traffic flows smoother, it's safer, it's easier to make turns, they're going to use the roundabouts. We have constructed several other roundabouts in Connecticut. We just don't have any complaints about people using neighborhood areas around them to avoid the roundabout. Once you remove a traffic signal and put the roundabout in, it operates so much more efficiently. You just don't have delay. You don't have traffic backups. Nobody would avoid it to take a 2-minute delay to travel through a neighborhood area as a detour. It's just not likely that that would happen.
But this is Norwich, and that's not reality here. It's like, people do, wheelies down my street. The FedEx guy speeds down my street. So to say that, using, not that I'm necessarily opposed to the roundabouts, but I'm looking at it as a permanent safety factor for us residents that live on narrow side streets that, currently people are using them and cutting through, and they're not stopping at stop signs. There's elderly people, there's kids that walk on my street, no sidewalks, it's Norwich, my street is 70, 80 years old. So I'm looking, me as the resident, what's the permanent solution to make sure my street can stay safe? Because, at night, 11 o'clock, someone may not want to deal with going slow through the roundabout, and they'll just cut through my street because it's convenient and it's easy and it's a side street and it's not police, and so who's going to stop them?
The problems that you're seeing now with people using your side street are more than likely because of the delays at the traffic signals. Once we install the roundabouts and things flow much more efficiently and smoothly, whatever traffic is currently detouring around and using your side streets, they're doing it to get around the traffic signals and the delays on Route 82. You're probably not going to see that, if you do.
But that's my question. Folks still can't navigate the roundabout downtown. So, those same people are not going to want to navigate 3, 5, or 6 roundabouts, going down the 82 corridor. And like I said, I'm not opposed to them, but I'm thinking long term, I personally don't see how this is going to stop some of that side street traffic.
Let's talk at that time. It may not stop all of it, but I'm confident it will reduce some of what you have today because the corridor will be much more efficient. So,
All right, thank you.
thank you. Back to this side, this gentleman.
My name is Phil Mayer. I'm a professor at Three Rivers Community College, which is on New London Turnpike. It may be helpful, if you have this information, to tell us what the traffic volume is on this stretch of Route 82. And if Mr. Lenters could actually tell us a similar roundabout corridor that had a similar traffic volume. The roundabout that you mentioned in Salem, Connecticut, at Route 82 and 85, has a traffic volume about 1/5 of what Route 82 has. So that's not the same situation here at all. My main concern is for phase 2 of this project, New London Turnpike. Many of my coworkers at Three Rivers are very anxious about what's going to happen. We do admit that the intersection of Route 82 and New London Turnpike is a huge pile of you-know-what. But that said, we don't want it to get any worse. New London Turnpike is used as an emergency route when 395 is closed. This happens about 1 to 2 times per month, where all that traffic from 395 gets forced either onto New London Turnpike as a bypass around whatever's going on 395, or people wind up taking Route 2 into Norwich to 82. So you're going to have a whole bunch of traffic at that roundabout as proposed during an accident or construction on 395. So I'm very concerned about that. Have you thought that through? I know that's phase 2, but I hope you're thinking about that. Another thing that I am very concerned about with that is, again, the traffic volumes there, pedestrians, people accessing, and you have mentioned the pedestrian crossings tonight, but I just hope that you consider that how New London Turnpike is used as a bypass. Thank you.
We are. Thank you for your comment, and we'll consider everything as we're working on phase 2. You know, I can let everyone know that we have obtained traffic volumes. We've been in process of conducting a very, very detailed capacity analysis and traffic modeling. The images that we showed you tonight for phase 1 certainly show how much more efficient a roundabout could operate compared to the traffic signal, which people are coming up, they're stopping at the light, the traffic just keeps building. The traffic signals are just very inefficient compared to a roundabout. At a roundabout, you have concurrent movements happening all at the same time, and it just makes them much more efficient. Just to be fair, I'm going to keep alternating sides of the room. Gentleman in the checkered shirt.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Paul Agranovich, and I'm with Universal Package Store on West Main Street. I think the ideas you're presenting sound great, but I don't think there's a lot of realism with them. Just to remind everybody how this started out originally, I think it's 7 years ago. You said that roundabouts were the answer, came to the city of Norwich, had meetings with Norwich. Norwich went along with it, and then a group of us got together and we looked at it, I think, fairly objectively, and we showed that that really isn't the answer. Norwich then came back and said, we don't want to do it. The state said, we're going to do it. So you weren't listening to us originally. I know at the last thing, going back 6 or 7 years ago, they were talking about somewhere in Colorado, and I remember at the time it was presented, look how these roundabouts that were put in, what a great job they did. We had somebody who did some research on it. One of the reasons that they did well was because of decreased traffic. Well, the traffic was decreased because there was a huge mall at the end of the street which closed. So you can take figures, make them work with the way you want them to do it. And I think that's wrong with that, okay? The mall closed, traffic went down, and that was the reason, for that. I also don't think that this is the only answer that you can have is the roundabouts. I think you can have such things, and I agree, we have to do something. There's a tremendous amount of, driving on it is sometimes, it's a zoo. Speeding, going through red lights, crossing out of lanes, but I think there are other solutions to look at before we go to this, kind of like the nuclear solution. I think one of the things is to have police patrols, unmarked cars, 15, 20 minutes a day, you'll make your money back on what they're doing. I think cameras also would be another thing. And I think another thing would be a road trip to Coleman Street in New London, where it's very similar to West Main Street in that we have 395 that comes out on our empties into it. They've got 95. I don't know if it's the same amount of curb cuts. I don't know that. But they have one thing on there. They have left-hand dedicated lanes only. And it works. When I'm on West Main Street, no matter what lane, if I'm on the right side, I'm afraid someone on the left side is going to come over and go into it. People on the left side just can't wait to get over, make an illegal cut. I'll buy you the first gallon of paint. Just make the left-hand lane. You can do that, and it's going to be a lot less cost effective. If all these things don't work, then you go to your thing. But I don't think that you go to this, as I say, the nuclear option at that point. And finally, it was just the way that something was said before about acquiring businesses. You know, these are things that have been built up years after year after year, and you want to just take it away and you're going to relocate them. I know where my store is, 29,000 cars a day go by. It's the best spot in Norwich. It has the highest volume. And you're just going to take people and find some other business for them. It's absolutely wrong to do it. It's a loss to the city. You're going to throw a few dollars to them and figure that they're going to be happy with it. So I just, you know, in conclusion, I'm frustrated. I was 7 years ago after we looked at it, and I still am. And you can tell me anything that you want to with it. Words are great, but the reality is what's going to do it. And I would really appreciate it if at the end of the day, you're left with your project. Thank you.
Well, we do appreciate your feedback, and that's why we're here tonight. We're at the 30% design level, gathering feedback and comments. It's part of our process, and thank you for standing up and talking. Back to this side of the room.
Hi, my name is Linda Theodorou. I recently purchased an e-bike with the intention of using it for almost all of my local transportation, but I avoid 82 as much as I possibly can because it is so dangerous. Your plan does look like it makes it much safer for bicyclists, but what I did not notice was a dedicated lane for cyclists. I realized that 5-foot shoulder would also be used by buses for stopping to pick up passengers, but some kind of marking to let cars know that this is not a parking spot, a place they could just stop and leave their car to go shopping, that would be helpful.
Thank you for your feedback. That's something we'll discuss with the city. I think what you're asking for is a bike lane on the right side and the shoulder. It requires some coordination with the city of Norwich to make that happen. Next, in red shirt.
Hi, Alex Kapolotis, Kids World Childcare on West Main Street. First question I have is you talk about all of these crashes that are on West Main Street and Crash Alley. How many of those crashes are attributed to speeding, illegal turns, passing through a signal illegally?
I don't have that data specifically for each one, and I'm not going to go into it. The crashes are there. They're happening because of driver behavior, right?
Correct. So if we have them patrolled more by the city police and slow the traffic down and keep them from running lights and illegally switching lanes, wouldn't that make a huge impact on the crashes on that road without doing
the policeman cannot be at every location on this road 24 hours a day, right? It's a short-term fix, and it may mitigate things a little bit for the short term while the officer's there, but it's not a permanent solution.
The city of Norwich has an abundance of patrolmen. I think they could maybe even hire a few more to put on that roadway permanently every day at least during business hours. That would mitigate a lot of the accidents. I travel that road probably 6 times a day. I see what goes on, but I also don't have any trouble making a left turn into my business or a left turn out of my business. And I go through Salem Four Corners quite often too, and I wait longer at that roundabout more than I'd wait to get at my business on West Main Street.
Thank you for your feedback.
The other question I had is, being that it's going to be reduced to one lane, you talk about the flow of traffic being so smooth because there's no lights. What about when there's buses stopping on that road and backing up the traffic? There's no way to pass a bus now if it's one lane.
There will be. At the bus shelter, we've provided a bus pull-out so the bus can can load passengers while traffic goes by.
What about when there's 3 different school buses running in the morning, midday, and afternoon? Where those buses are stopping every couple of houses, or at our business, or at somewhere else to let off children. Now all traffic has to stop, and then it goes another 100 yards, stops again, goes another 100 yards, stops again. When there's a second lane, vehicles can pass that when they're not stopped, when they don't have their lights going.
You may have some delays due to school buses for safety, right? That's just part of it. And having traffic stop behind a school bus is safe. That's good sense.
Correct, but
I think it's also illegal to pass a bus when it's stopped and children might be crossing the road.
correct. But what I am saying is, like right now, when it stops in front of our center to let off children, there is a line of traffic behind it. When the lights go off and they start going up to their next stop, cars can pass that bus in the left-hand lane. Now they're stuck behind it the entire length of that corridor. It's going to back up into each roundabout as they go down. And I also asked this question previously and nobody had an answer for me. It's now going to be considered a divided highway because of the median. Does that oncoming traffic have to still stop? Because right now they do, and we have a giant issue with that. If they don't have to stop and somebody thinks they do, that median is low enough for a car to drive over. That's the whole point of it, so that truck traffic can drive over it. It's not going to stop an oncoming car from coming into children getting off of that bus. And that's not just in front of us, that's the entire corridor. Have we thought about any of those aspects with this new project?
Well, the concern you have for a vehicle crossing over the median, we certainly have more protection with the curbing there and the raised median and the street trees and the lower speeds than you would under today's conditions. You know, one thing to keep in mind is the speeds to this corridor are going to be significantly lower. We're talking about safety, right? And that's the goal here. Improve safety.
If you spent enough time on that road, it's not going to slow down. People do 60 miles an hour down that road, and they're going to still do that. They're going to pass in the bus lanes. They're going to, that median is low enough, people will still make left turns over that median. I can guarantee that.
The roundabouts are designed for 25 miles an hour.
Okay.
It has curvature, it has curbing. You're going to have to slow down to go through it. The sections of roadway between the roundabouts, the speeds may get up to 30, maybe in the low 30s. You're not going to see high speeds after this project.
And my last question is, with the raised median, come winter time, how do they remove the snow from that median?
That's something we'll work on with the city. So the median does not get plowed. It's only the crosswalk.
But the median is made the way it's going to be so that truck traffic can back in to businesses to access them.
No. Truck traffic is not drawing over the median. Only on the roundabout at the truck apron, not the median and the roadway between the roundabouts.
When a tanker truck has to back in, or a food delivery truck has to back into a restaurant or a gas station, with one lane there's not enough room for them to swing out like they do at Dunkin' Donuts across all 4 lanes to back into that property. So how are they going to do that?
Trucks can go over the truck apron here at the roundabout. It's designed for that.
I'm talking about in front of a business. When they go
Mike,
back
can you
into
give me a slide that has the raised median?
So we've been working with the business owners along the corridor to find out what types of delivery trucks they get. And once we get that information, we make sure that we accommodate and adjust the entrances to the driveways. Sometimes we widen them so that trucks that are currently taking up all those lanes can come into the driveway without having to mount the center island truck apron.
You take Dunkin' Donuts at 538 West Main Street, which is very close to my business. When that truck backs into there several times a week, it goes across all 4 lanes to be able to make that swing into that parking lot. The parking lot is very tight. There's no way you could turn a truck trailer around in that parking lot. And I was told at one of the previous meetings that was why they weren't going to do a full median. They were going to do a low raised median because truck traffic to be able to cross over and back into the businesses to deliver.
We worked with the property owner at Dunkin' Donuts, and they were satisfied with our solution.
Okay.
Trucks will not be backing over the median. Back to the side of the room.
Yeah, hi. My name is Marsha Wilbur, and I have a few questions. First of all, was the safety consideration based on the audit done in 2015 or 2016? That was just one question that I had.
We've been looking at this roadway since the early 2000s. I can tell you there was a study and report done around 2005 which evaluated two-way left turn lanes. Then again, later on, the region and the city have been looking for safety solutions here for years. There was crash data run, as you mentioned, probably around 2015. We just ran the crash data again in the last couple of years, and it's very similar.
So I ran the crash data tonight, and it says in your flyer here that there are between 2017 and 2021, approximately 100 crashes and 35 injuries per year occurred in this section of Route 82. I put in the, what was it, 72.23 or whatever it was. I used the Yukon repository, and I came up with results of 51 crashes last year with no fatalities, and I think it was two injuries. And the year before that, there was an unfortunate event on Memorial Day, but there was only 56 crashes. So that's a little bit different than saying there's 100 a year. The other thing is, going back to that safety audit, I saw that the main agenda was bicycle and pedestrian. And along Route 82, we're trying to get things done. We're trying to go to businesses. We're trying to live our lives. And I don't know about the pedestrian agenda there because it's cold here too. Like, people aren't riding their bicycles in the snow. It might work in San Diego, but maybe not here, right? So I have to say, I don't know about that consideration, but my major comment and consideration is for the businesses that are, going to be displaced by, whatever. Is there going to be a seamless migration from their existing business to the new business when that time happens? I know you have a whole process for, the eminent domain and signing things, but will the migration be seamless so that the people who are working in those businesses, not just the owners, the people in this town making a living, will they be displaced? And is there a plan for that?
We are working with each individual business owner to address their specific needs. With respect to the crashes, we're also using the Yukon Crash Repository. So I'm sorry you got different data than we did, but we're using the same resource. As far as bicycles go, on Route 82, people are riding bicycles on the sidewalk because they're not safe in the roadway. They don't feel safe in the road.
We have an ordinance that says they can't do that.
They're doing it.
I know they're not enforcing it, but maybe I understand that. But like some other people have mentioned, a bike lane, or how about a bike path? That doesn't even include going into dangerous areas of traffic. And so you say, dangerous areas of traffic. And yes, we have a lot of transportation needs in this town. We do. I fully want to work with, and grow with projects for transportation in this town. This one, displacing people and businesses and workers and disrupting bus service to the people on Osgood who live in Oakwood Knoll or Westwood and don't have transportation. They have to walk an extra mile, in the cold with their children to get to a bus. They have to go around things, even during construction or after. I'm sorry, I can't support all of what's going on with this project.
We're not displacing bus service, ma'am.
Oh, you're not?
We're
I
not.
thought you said that you were going to move the bus stop.
Yeah, across one intersection.
Yeah. So the people on Osgood have to walk a little bit more, or people have to walk more.
Maybe 200 feet.
Yeah, okay. So I want to know what the Department of Transportation can offer the people of Norwich in this community, because I know you said that this is our community and these are our friends and family that don't want this. I got 173 comments on Facebook. Most of them were like, we don't need roundabouts. We don't want roundabouts, things like that. I know some people asked for a vote. Can we get a vote on it, or is it just this commenting period?
It's a comment period. We're not doing a vote tonight, but I will thank you for your feedback.
Thank you.
You asked what you could get, right? So that's the reason for tonight's meeting. We're at the 30% design level. We're still very early. We're a long ways away from construction, and this is part of the process, to come out and meet with people and hear feedback just like you gave us. It'll be part of the meeting record. We'll consider it, and we'll work with the city, and we'll move ahead.
All right, thank you.
Back to the side of the room, the man in a white shirt.
Thank you all very much. My name is Robert Bell, and thank you all for having this presentation this evening, because, you know, most of the information I've been receiving is just, you know, talking to this person here, talking to that person there, mostly hearing people who are extremely opposed to this sort of thing. So I just really was, thank you for giving me the opportunity to actually get information straight from a source. Now, Route 82, as you said, as everyone else here has said, is extremely dangerous, especially in the wintertime when there's snow covering the sidewalks. We've got pedestrian walking in the driving lanes. Now, I really appreciated the part where you're saying you got like a 5-foot side lanes for pedestrians and bikes and those sorts of things. Just moving forward, I would encourage you to think about the responsibility of keeping those clear, so that when we're going down into a single lane road, that we don't have the pedestrians walking in that single lane. We're constantly having to get out of their way. The roads are still icy, extremely dangerous. I like a lot of it. A big concern of mine, though, is the displacement of the businesses, as you've already heard. 5 have already, you say 5 in phase 1. It looks like sign professionals, the dance school next to it, the barber shop, and the gas station. And you're at 30%. Now, I'm okay with if the business owners are like, yeah, okay, we'll take your offer for purchase and we'll move our business down the road. I get it. We're all Americans. We're a free will. But if a person does not want to do that, I'm a little adamant about the or else. You know, we'll take your business out of condemnation. You know, if it comes to that, are they still getting compensated, or are they just getting thrown out on the street? These are things that this country doesn't represent that. And we just need to start moving away from that, and just, we have to support each other. I mean, we would love to support this, but when you're going to be displacing people in that manner, it's not okay. So just keep those in mind, and I appreciate your time, and thank you for the presentation today.
So I'm going to give you 2 responses, one on the 5-foot shoulder, what we're planning for bicycles and pedestrians. We're going to have a 5-foot shoulder being proposed in the project. That would be plowed with the roadway. The roadway gets plowed, the shoulder gets plowed too. The pedestrian accommodation is a sidewalk, brand new sidewalks throughout the entire corridor. As an off-road facility for pedestrians. And Dennis, I'm going to ask you to speak about eminent domain and compensation, and maybe the board of real estate appraisers that review the offers.
Yeah, so regardless of an agreement or condemnation, the property owner will get paid. Condemnation is really a tool for us to keep the project on schedule, but also to give the property owner the opportunity to appeal if they don't agree with our offer. It affords them the opportunity to appeal the offer through the court system. As far as the offers are concerned, we appraise. We have licensed appraisers who appraise the value of the property, and the offers are based on those appraisals.
Thank you. In the green shirt?
Good evening. My name is Sheila Hayes. I'm a resident here in Norwich. My question is around a safety issue, but it's not around roundabouts. Early on in the presentation, you mentioned about moving utility lines versus taking the opportunity to put utility lines underground. Why would we not consider, if you're going to relocate utility lines, putting them underground for safety reasons, since this whole project is about safety?
Right. We did investigate that at the mayor's request. The utilities are currently overhead. They're on poles. When you talk about telephone, power, cable TV, they're all in poles, they're overhead. Norwich Public Utilities, DOT, if we had to replace them, move them, we pay 100% of the cost for that work. The cost of moving them in kind and keeping them overhead was recently estimated around $850,000 for phase 1 of the project. We also asked the utility to provide an estimate of what it would be to go underground. And you got to remember, that's underground pole to pole to pole. It's underground for power, it's underground for the telephone, it's underground for the cable TV. But then it also becomes underground from the pole to each of the businesses and the property owners. You have the service facilities that have to get underground as well too. It's estimated close to $18 million to go underground. So we did reach out for the estimates for comparison, so we'd have the numbers to discuss. But to go underground is almost the cost of the entire project. It's just not, it's too expensive. But it is something that we looked into.
And just
Under safety, again, under safety, because of changing with our climate change and environment, I would ask for reconsideration, that you look at, there has to be ways the city has put cable and lines underground for those reasons, and I think it would be prudent for the state to really look at it as an investment and not just look at the bottom line cost of it. Thank you.
And I'd just like to add real quick, Scott, when we discuss relocating utilities, our need to relocate utilities for this project is fairly isolated to each intersection with a couple poles. So we have no need to relocate the entire corridor in order to complete the proposed work. So just to make sure people understand that we're not proposing to relocate the entire corridor, all the poles down the corridor. So when we discuss our relocation, it's a certain number of utility poles, mostly focused at the intersections.
On this side, checkered shirt.
Hi, Scott. The presentation and with the rest of the team, thank you for the excellent presentation. It was very impressive. But I wanted to share with you that I'm a lifelong resident of Norwich, and I'm one of those people that avoids the Rotary in Salem. I cut through the parking lot by Chelsea Groton Bank when I'm going to the town hall, or I go up 354 and down Rattlesnake, and then I enter the town hall of Salem where I own property in Salem. So I try to avoid it at all costs. Last week I was at the Rotary down in by Bon Appetit there in North Stonington, I believe it is. I guess I was going far too slow, and people are tooting their horn as I'm going around that little Rotary roundabout, whatever you call it. My blood pressure, I'm sure, goes up every time you have to get near one of those things. If I was wearing a monitor, I'm sure it's going to elevate. And I can't see myself being able to cope with it anymore as I go into my 70s and my late 70s, because it's an issue for me now. And I'll probably be one of those people who's driving down Ella's side street to avoid certain rotaries here in Norwich if they ever come to fruition. I talked to Senator Kathy Austin this morning about the speed issue on 82, and I said, gee, why can't we start immediately by putting in these solar speed panels? Try them. You can put those in a month. It might help with the speed if you put 7 of those in on 82. Left-hand turns, I don't have a solution. I do agree with you, they're a big issue over there, having gone down Asylum and Mechanic to clients. But that's something we could do immediately. Try the solar panels to reduce the speed. Thank you.
I appreciate your well-structured comments, and I was smiling as you were speaking, thinking of your neighbor over here in the side streets with people avoiding the roundabout. So thank you for your comment. We appreciate it. I think some public education would help with people better understanding roundabouts and how to safely drive them and how they work. Back to the side of the room, this woman in green.
Good evening, my name is Stacy Gould. You talked about rolling queue. So tell me how, with a rolling queue, do pedestrians cross through the crosswalk? If traffic's not stopping, how is anyone who's in that crosswalk getting across the street?
There'll be gaps in traffic. So that rolling queue is not constant. That's not all day long. You get a short period with frequent arrivals, and it'll build up for a short period of time, and then it's going to dissipate. The traffic models show that. There'll be gaps in traffic. The benefit is you only have to cross one direction of traffic. Currently, you've got to cross 4 lanes of traffic, opposing directions. Yes, you have the walk phase, but you're exposed. You're in the roadway. You're exposed to potential red light running, right turn on red, things like that. With the roundabouts and the raised medians, These types of geometric features, they control driver behavior. Speeds are going to be reduced because the corridor is going to be narrowed significantly. We have traffic calming features in this project. You know, another label for this is complete streets. Bicycles, pedestrians, automobiles, it's multimodal transportation. And it does accommodate pedestrians very well.
I would love to see it in action. You don't show any people crossing the street here with the traffic moving, and you obviously haven't been on West Main Street at 8 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But how many seat bus stops will be impacted with this, with all the new rotaries? Are you moving all of them, just one of them?
I wouldn't say impacted. We're just moving it across the intersection, and we're putting in a brand new bus shelter.
So we're moving all of them that are on West Main Street presently?
One.
So you're just moving one. So the ones that are existing now...
One shelter.
So the other existing shelters will stay in place?
There's only one shelter in phase one.
Okay. You haven't discussed what kind of lighting there will be for pedestrians who are in the center area of this roundabout. What kind of lighting will there be for their safety?
Pedestrians don't belong in the center of the roundabout. They'll be using these crosswalk areas.
Or, I'm sorry, in the crosswalk
Right.
area.
So
what kind of lighting will there be there?
Street lighting. We do a lighting study which reviews the amount of lumens on the street for every square foot of the intersection, and we design the number of street lights based on a certain intensity that's required for pedestrian crossings. It's a full engineering study that details the placement of the street lights all the way around the roundabout.
And my final question, in phase one, you're talking about the closure of 4 businesses?
Yes,
In phase two, how many businesses are you closing?
4. It's 5 in phase one and 4 more in phase two. And phase two, I'm going to say, is proposed. We still have a lot of design work to do there. There may be some changes. It may be less. But at the moment, it looks like proposed would be 4 in phase two, 5 in phase one.
And if these businesses do not choose to relocate in Norwich, Connecticut, who makes up that tax impact to the city?
State of Connecticut does not have a process of compensating the city for lost tax revenue. But Stacy, after the roundabouts are built, I'll meet you at the crosswalk and I'll buy you a coffee. We'll walk across the intersection.
Okay.
Okay, other side of the room. Thanks.
Good evening. My name's Michael Allard. I'm a chiropractor here in Norwich, Connecticut. I have 2 properties on that road. One was my old business, which is located at 598 West Main Street in Norwich. One of my concerns is for the 9 businesses or so that will be relocated off of either Salem Turnpike or West Main Street. I had a forced relocation in December 31st of 2016. My building burned down. My sign's still up there in that location. I came to Norwich in 2003. It's the best spot in Norwich for business. The traffic count is high, the visibility is high. After my fire, I moved down to Lafayette Street for approximately 3 years. I probably saw a 25 to 30% reduction in my business being off that main road. So I know you talk about you'll have appraisers appraise people's properties and make them an adequate offer. If you took my property and I moved to Lafayette Street, you'd compensate me for my practice or for the property, but who compensates a person for a 25 to 30% year after year reduction in their business revenue from not having that visibility on that main street? As far as I know, I'm not impacted by this, but I do have a concern for the other businesses that will have an impact, especially if they are not able to relocate on that main strip. So that's my first question.
So It's 4 that would be affected because 1 is a gas station and the gas station will not be relocated. So there'll be 4 businesses. Sign professionals.
I thought you said 5 in phase 2. That's why I said 9.
There's 5 in phase 1, which is what tonight's meeting is focusing on, but 1 of those in phase 1 is a gas station, and we will not be relocating the gas station. So the other 4, sign professionals, the dance studio, the former Strange Brew, and then the barber shop. Dennis, you want to take a stab at business relocations?
Yeah, so during our process, as you mentioned, we pay for the real estate through an appraisal. And we work with the businesses on the other end of things with the relocation. So we work very closely with the businesses. We have an agent assigned to each displaced business. We go through interviews to try and determine their needs. And we work with them to try and find a suitable replacement location. You know, I've been with the department for about 10 years. I've personally helped to relocate several residences and businesses, and I've seen the process work, and I understand it is completely not ideal. No one wants their business disrupted, but the process does work. I've seen it work, and I've seen several successful commercial relocations. So I just ask that, you know, the businesses that are displaced, they trust us, they trust the process, and it will work.
Okay, that doesn't really answer the revenue loss that they will likely experience if they, I mean, if you want to stay in Norwich, West Main Street's the place to be. If you move off of that street, the visibility, you're not going to typically maintain, you know, your same status in your business. So anyways, so my next comment was, there was a woman earlier who had mentioned side street traffic due to the roundabouts. I'm not sure how the effect of the side streets will be, but what do you think the effect will be over the 5-year period on those side streets when people want to avoid the construction on the main road and are going to look over 5 years to find every possible way to avoid the construction, which would likely take them on the side streets over that 5-year period?
Well, as part of the project construction, we stated we would be closing some of the side streets for 2-week periods. You know, at that time, the adjacent grid work is going to get used. You know, people will be using the adjacent side streets to cut around and get in the back way. So they're going to see an increase in traffic. Aside from that, DOT's not going to detour Route 82 traffic onto the side streets, but people have GPSs and they're going to find their own way. And yes, it's possible at certain times it may see an increase.
Well, I was just trying to address her concerns, because she was concerned about the speed and, you know, families and kids on those side streets, and you didn't, I mean, it wasn't brought up, but during the construction, there's going to probably be a significant increase on that usage of those side streets.
And remember I mentioned we're going to have a community business liaison, and that person would be available to help deal with those kinds of problems and concerns that come in and speak with everybody and go out and do research and see what's happening and work with the DOT to try to implement a solution if there is a problem.
Okay. And so my last question is, I know you've come to the decision that the roundabouts are the best way to address a lot of the accidents, the traffic patterns, et cetera. Have you ever put together or let us in on, like, what was the second best choice and what was the third best choice, and how far apart were they in reducing traffic accidents, et cetera? You know, and are they close? And would they have less impact on businesses, less need to take property from people? So that's kind of a question I'd have is, you know, I haven't seen other options or alternatives presented, and how they would have an impact on crossers.
So there's a figure up on the screen right now, and in 2017, we did an internal feasibility study where we compared the options that you see on the screen, which is if we were to do nothing, if we were to put in a 2-way left turn lane, if we were to install the raised median, which is the biggest safety benefit, and then just do turnarounds every so often, or to do the solution that we chose, which is the roundabouts with the raised median in conjunction. And there's some figures up here. The important ones are highlighted in green, and we tracked crash rate. And you can see that with the roundabouts and the raised medians, it showed by far the greatest decrease in crashes. And, that's when we did this feasibility study, this is really what drove us to this solution. Because as Scott mentioned, back in 2005, we looked at a lot of options to address this safety benefit, and we didn't really find a solution that decreased crashes. And then until we looked at the roundabouts.
Okay. So I don't necessarily disagree that it would decrease it, but do you do a kind of a cost benefits analysis to say, well, we'll decrease crashes by this much, but we won't ruin businesses by this much? And where can you find that balance? It seems like the only concern is really about let's get the crashes as low as possible. Obviously, I don't want people to be hurt, but there's other impacts on it, from economic impacts. And so, have you done any kind of cost benefits analysis of crashes to economic impact on people?
Crashes to economic impact in terms of business loss, no, but we did compare the footprint of the project with various alternatives in what would impact businesses. So if you put in a two-way left turn lane, you've got to widen the entire road for the entire length of the corridor, a whole lane width. We're not doing that now. We're actually narrowing the road and using one of the lanes that we're removing to put in the raised median. So although we have businesses displaced at the roundabouts, between the intersections, we don't have business impacts. If you were to widen the road to put in that turning lane, the entire road would be widened that much to put in that lane. And if you remember one of the videos I played very early in the presentation, it showed someone at Willow's Corners trying to make a left turn out of the driveway. He had to get a gap in these two lanes and then a gap in this lane to make his turn. If you add the two-way left turn lane, when this guy comes out, he's got to get a gap all the way across to go into his lane and make a left. And this, although it would help with vehicles making left into businesses, it doesn't address safety benefits at the intersections. You still have all the angle crashes that are occurring at the intersections. Those tend to be the ones that are higher speeds and most severe. You have the people red light running or trying to beat the yellow at the intersections. This type of solution doesn't fix that. And that's just a lot of the history that led us into the raised medians with the roundabouts. We want to provide the best solution for you. We want to do a cost-effective project and something that's going to address safety for all users.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to move on to this side of the room. Gentleman in the blue shirt.
My name is David Burnett. I might be a minority of one tonight and perhaps a respite for you guys. I am very much in favor of the state's plan to move traffic with this safer, carefully orchestrated plan. The city must move into the future, and the future includes roundabouts. This plan is safer and better for city businesses and business development in the long run. Yes, some short-term discomfort is necessary, but we must face that and move into the future with safer, more effective traffic flow planning. The state knows what they are doing. This plan is much better for business and economic development, and therefore better for our tax base in the long haul. Effective and safer traffic planning is one way to send a message to young, entrepreneurial-minded people that this city is a good place to consider for starting a business. This plan represents a significant investment in this city by the state. This is an investment that we must take advantage of. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Appreciate your comment. Back to the side of the room, man in the blue shirt.
Yeah, I've met y'all before. Rodney Green, Old Times Restaurant. Most of you know me. I have one of the largest frontages on West Main Street. Been there for over 38 years. It was a two-lane road when I opened up back in '84. I don't know how many of you remember that or what we went through for the widening process. And I go back to that and I look at that and I think about the reputation that DOT developed with that project, and then how much better their reputation got when they redid the intersection at 82 and 395 and eliminated a lot of the traffic problems. I can see that people are afraid, nervous. This whole roundabout concept seems kind of foreign, and in some places it is. I've seen it done in many different countries, in many different states in the United States. The only place I've seen it done poorly is Boston, where they literally have roundabouts and a red light at an intersection 20 feet outside the roundabout so you can't get out of it. I don't see that happening here, so I think you're okay. I'm looking forward to it. I've met with y'all a couple of times. I've tried to express that I really look forward to it. I think it'd be great for the aesthetics of the street. It could wind up being a jewel or feather in the hat for Norwich. To actually have something that we can be proud for people to see. Unfortunately, I have to admit, though, that I won't be here to see it, because no way will I be able to survive the construction period, and at my age, I'm pretty much done. So as much as I appreciate it, and I hope it goes well, I look forward to all the work you put into it. I appreciate all the efforts you've done, but unfortunately for me, I'm done. Thank you.
Rodney, thank you for your comment. Appreciate that. And you know, for the folks in the audience, I want to mention we've been meeting with a lot of business owners along the street. Almost all the plaza owners that are here, they're family businesses. They were here in the 80s with Rodney when DOT widened the road from 2 lanes to 4. Every one of them we've heard, you know, the road was all torn up for over a mile. The driveways got steep, you know, we heard that, you know, and during the presentation we talked today about the community business liaison to work with people, you know, the 2-week look ahead on the website to give people information. You know, it's a different DOT. You know, we have some sensitivity here that's part of tonight's process, and we don't want to repeat, you know, the negativity that occurred 40 years ago. Mayor Nystrom?
Good evening. I appreciate Rodney's comments. They're consistent. He was the first business that you guys met with. I was with him at the table at his place of business. His assessment, though, is assessment shared by many, many other businesses you will not see or hear from tonight. The market share loss throughout this corridor is going to be substantial, much more than significant. I can tell you in conversations I've had with the ShopRite in the plaza over there, 10, 12, 15% market share loss, that's permanent. People don't come back. If that happens, there's a pretty solid opportunity that we will lose much of that plaza, and maybe even ShopRite, because they exist on the margin. They're not big profit centers. As a state rep, I lived 3 years on that road after that widening from 2 to 4. And one of the biggest concerns I have, and I shared it with the commissioner of DOT on Monday, and they acknowledged what you just said, so I thank you for being consistent. The subcontracting that takes place after the road is built, it can be a nightmare. And it was a nightmare back then. We're talking about improperly installed sidewalks, staircases, drainage, you name it. They corrected it, but it was a battle. Subcontractors want their money, they want to get it quick, and they want to get out and go to the next site. They really don't care about the product. So I mentioned that to the commissioner. I want to mention that to all of you. I am concerned about fire response. I fought for a year and a half with State Traffic Commission to insist that they install a preemption system on that. In that, that means when East Great Plain leaves the firehouse, they actually can take control of the lighted system in order to respond. Well, we know there'll be no lighted system at all, so the preemption system goes away. And I just have to ask a question. When cars are in the queue, in between the roundabouts, is there sufficient space for fire trucks to go past those cars in that single lane to respond to an accident, to a fire?
Yes. If the vehicle pulls to the right, there's sufficient space. If the vehicle doesn't pull all the way to the right, we still have provisions for the fire truck to go up on the curbing, as shown here. It's a 4-inch curbing, it's sloped, it's mountable. This is not the intent here. This vehicle should be all the way over here at the curb. But if they don't, we still have considered opportunities. The fire truck can mount that 4-inch curb. It's sloped, it's angled, and it's designed for the load of the fire truck. And we've met with both fire departments 2 times to review this feasibility. Another option we discussed with them is the ability to cross over the median. And there was a gentleman here earlier that was talking about tractor trailers making deliveries across the median, which would be illegal. But in response to an emergency event, if for some reason this section of roadway was completely closed due to a crash, the fire truck would be able to mount the median between the street trees. The trees are spaced at 100 feet. And there's plenty of opportunity for the fire truck to cross the median, go down to the roundabout and come back, or fight the fire from the other side of the roadway.
Okay, thank you. You've talked about relocation of overhead lines and things of that nature. The commissioner was notified, in fact, you were provided information from Norwich Public Utilities recently, the concern being the underroad water lines across this entire corridor. They're 100 years old. They did survive the compaction schedule when this road was expanded from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. The question now is, will they survive a compaction schedule again? The opinion of Norwich Public Utilities is they will not, and therefore, the last thing we want to do is build a whole new road system and have to tear it up because we start having water main breaks under the surface. So I know you're going to be looking at that. I know you were sent the information and cost analysis, so I'm looking forward to further dialogue on that. But that does increase the cost of this project greatly. The question is, who's going to be responsible for it? And we don't have that answer yet. But I know all of us here in Norwich are very interested in that. I happen to like the roundabout in Franklin Square, and I see the value of them. Personally, I just think for a distance of 1.3 miles, 6 is just overkill. And I understand, I mean, I would entertain permanent closure of some of these roads that enter onto that road, elimination of other aprons, and after that evaluation is done, how many roundabouts do you really need? And I would just pose that question for future discussion.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Yes?
Roberta Payro, I live in Norwich, and based on the data that you presented and the vision that's out there, I think this would be a very good improvement for the city. I can certainly understand the existing businesses' concerns. I guess I had 2 things I wanted to ask about, and that has to do with thinking about the businesses or the people living in the apartment that would be asked to move or have to move. And does the DOT or whoever is contracting with them survey people that go through this process? Do you have any data as to, you know, how people have experienced the process? That might be helpful to know since you've used a lot of data to present tonight. And the other thing, I work in Pawcatuck, Connecticut, a couple of days a week, and while I'm working there, I am a pedestrian there and in Westerly. There are no electronic signals at all to cross the street in those areas. You must enter the crosswalk with your arm up, and you're kind of looking and hoping people are paying attention. And that might be the best we can do since they're supposed to be stopping for us in the crosswalk. I think it might help some of us who are thinking about this if you could add a little bit into your presentation about, you know, talked about pedestrian safety, but if you could give examples as you did for roundabouts from other locations. I guess I read somewhere that there's a city of about 100,000 in Indiana that has 0 lights. It's just all roundabouts. So I guess that information is out there. I would appreciate that, and I appreciate the work you did. The last time I saw this was a number of years ago at a city council meeting.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Grader, and I own the third-generation old business Grader Jewelers at 561 West Main Street, across diagonally from Dunham. I realize we're at the tail end of Phase 1, but we are a big X when it comes to Phase 2. I am opposed to the taking of my building by eminent domain for the purpose of the roundabout at the intersection of Dunham Street and Route 82. I believe that the roundabout project is excessive both monetarily and an overall concept. I do not believe that a roundabout at the Dunham Street area is needed. Our location in the building that we built to our specifications to serve the community and to improve and upgrade the appearance of Norwich's west side was a culmination of 56 years of doing business in Norwich. We took years and years to locate the prime location, acquire the property, and work with architects to achieve the quality of the building that the state wants to bulldoze. The state believes that by purchasing buildings that will be torn down and paying some relocation costs will make us whole. This is far from reality. The loss to all of the businesses on Route 82 during this process will be too much for many businesses to recover from. They are not only impacting businesses, but they're also potentially devastating owners and employees' financial futures. How unsettling to families during these difficult times. In conclusion, when you've been in business for as long as we have, you see many different concepts, some good, some bad, and mostly for good intentions. May I remind you of New London's Captain Walk concept. It was a newer concept at the time, closing down State Street for motor vehicles and only having foot traffic. It was a well-considered project at the time, but it ultimately failed desperately and closed many, many businesses and hurt families. Let's not let good intentions have unintended consequences. Let's scale back this project and spend finances more prudently. Thank you for your time.
I appreciate your feedback on Grader's Jewelers, and that's in Phase 2 of the project, and I mentioned that it's still in concept design. You know, it was clear in concept design that there were some businesses impacted, potentially total acquisitions, and you know, we've shown them on the map there, being honest, moving ahead, but we still have a lot more design work to do on Phase 2. Phase 1's only 30%. There may be changes. I wouldn't, you know, go home tonight saying, you know, your business is a complete acquisition. It's in Phase 2 and we didn't get there yet. So it's only a quick look on a concept plan, and we have some more work to do. We will stay in touch with you as we start to develop Phase 2 and give you more information as we have it, okay? I'd like to go back to this side of the room, this gentleman.
Thank you, Scott. This is Swaranjit Singh from Norwich. So I have few suggestions, and also I really hope all the comments which are made today here, they're not completely ignored, because we are at 30% of our project pace at this point, so we can implement a lot of these suggestions in a good way. I know there is no strategy or no grants available right now on the negative business impacts, which will be, everyone will be suffering while construction, all the businesses. So there should be some grants available, especially the businesses who can show that maybe they have lost 15% of their sales during the construction period. So they should be reimbursed somehow. Also, the business who are being displaced, sometimes it takes a business maybe 1 or 2 years to revive when they change the location. There should be some business loss which should be added to when we appraise the property as well. So that's another suggestion. A question that I have is, like, you were showing the driveway in and out time for one of the car was like 65 seconds, right? Now, because there was traffic stop as well, because we had all these lights, now everything will be in continued fashion. Do we have anything, like how many seconds it will take from somebody to go in the like the road now from the driveway, like exit out?
It will
Or is
be-
it easy enough? Because sometimes we have a lot of traffic on this road.
It will be much more efficient. You know, as far as seconds, I don't have that for you, but we did show a visualization of the intersection that compared the signalized intersection to the roundabout, and you could see that the roundabout was operating much more efficiently. You know, the good news is you only have to cross one lane of traffic. You only need a gap in one lane. The video at Willow's Corners, you know, he needed a video in at least 3 lanes to be able to, he needed a gap in at least 3 lanes to be able to execute his left turn. So it's going to be much easier to make the turn. It's also going to be a right turn instead of a left turn. So those left turns are now going to be right turns. Make your right turn, go down to the roundabout and come back. You don't need as much of a gap in traffic to execute a right turn because it's a shorter turning distance. Speeds will be going much slower. We anticipate 25 to 30 miles an hour between the roundabouts. It'll be much easier to judge a gap and make the turn.
Okay, and another concern, and I'm very sorry, but all these roundabouts are very bland. And when we compare it to the other countries where they have these roundabouts, they're really nice. You know, and one of the thing in our complete street plan is we gotta make our city look more welcoming as well. So do we have any plan for that? Or, because of course roundabouts are with the state, so if we get a request from the city, somebody wants to do something.
We're open, right? So we've been working with City Public Works and City Engineering on what the center of the roundabout should look like. We've developed a pretty comprehensive and tiered landscape plan where you'd have taller trees in the middle with illumination shining up on the trees to help with nighttime safety and visibility, and then shorter plantings around the perimeter and multicolored species. You know, the message that we got from City Council the last time we were out here was reduce maintenance, right? Don't create a maintenance burden on the city. So the landscape plan that we have, the median plantings, it's all designed with that in mind, and something that doesn't require a significant amount of work for Public Works to come out and take care of. But if you have ideas for what you'd like to see in the middle of the roundabout, you know, write them on your comment form, and next time I work with City Public Works, we'll have a conversation, we'll discuss it.
All right, thank you, Scott.
Good evening, Joanne Philbrick. I'd like to make a couple of comments and then ask you a question. You talk about community. We all understand that Norwich is a poor community. But we're a family. We may be a dysfunctional family a lot of the time, but we are family. You have invited yourselves into our home. We want to be hospitable. We want to make you welcome. But we also want you to respect our home, and if we decide collectively that we would like to ask you to leave, I think that we need that option. Unfortunately, I did not get a warm, fuzzy feeling in some of the discussion, especially when it came to the taking, and that is the word, of businesses, people's livelihoods. There's a socioeconomic component to that, but there's also an emotional. A lot of these businesses have put their blood, sweat, and tears into these businesses. They've built relationships. It's like in a bad divorce when the kids need to choose between mom and dad. Both parents may be excellent, loving, caring, but the children are placed in a position where they have to choose. And some businesses may say, you know what, it's not worth the effort, and so they will move to another community. So please take that into consideration. The ultimate decision, you know, this is all wonderful. In your opinion, it may not be wonderful in other people's. I don't understand why years ago, well, it wasn't that many years ago, when the city council, a particular member of the council asked you, why not do a trial period of changing the timing on the traffic light. I myself have gone down 82, and by the time you realize where you want to go, you don't have time to make the turn because it's like this. It's this quick, this quick, this quick. Traffic enforcement. It is a major problem in this country. COVID has brought out the mentality of the Wild West. People do not pay attention to speed limits, traffic lights, stop signs. I'm not sure that this is going to alleviate that situation or make it worse. So please just consider that. And then my question to you is the $20 million price tag for phase one?
Yes.
Okay, we are headed into a recession. So is the $20 million predicated on today's market?
It was estimated as recently as 3 months ago with inflation factors for the next 3 years built into the estimate.
Okay, so we all know, or most of us know, that when your contractor says to you, it's going to cost $15,000 to replace your roof, you run into supply chain issues, you run into cost overrides. So what is your cost override on the, what have you figured, I forget what the term is, how much have you figured into your $20 million for unforeseeable?
The word you're looking for is contingency.
Yes, thank you.
And I believe we're in the 15% neighborhood.
So of the $20 million, 15% of that is contingency? Okay. How has this money, and I'm not going to use the word earmarked because I don't like that word. Have you placed, what portion of this $20 million has the state of Connecticut placed in escrow to finance this project?
We do not have the money in hand today. This is how it works. When we talk about $20 million planned for this project to start construction in 2025, we're looking ahead at our program, our budget, right? Every year, your family has a budget for your house. We have a budget for operating at DOT. That budget indicates maintenance expenses, work we're going to do on bridges, work on highways, work on multimodal transportation type projects. A significant amount of our money comes in from the Federal Highway Department, right? It's part of the transportation bill. So we know on an annual basis how much money it's allocated to Connecticut from the transportation bill from Federal Highway Administration, and we can plan projects to match up with that amount of funding that's coming in. So this project is programmed for construction costs in fiscal year 2025 to account for this project.
Okay, and it's interesting that you talk about family budgets because, again, we all know that the state of Connecticut and the federal government get their money from the taxpayers. So when taxpayers and families are impacted by recessions and inflation, our budgets are skewed also. I just hope that you will take into consideration, Rodney talked about it a little bit. I'm this far away from 80. I probably won't be here in 2025 or 2026. Another lady talked about being older and the problems or the adjustments one has to make in situations like this. Yes, we move forward and life goes on, but this cannot be another fiasco placed upon the city of Norwich. Please give this a huge amount of consideration. I've talked to people and they say, I'm not going tomorrow, I'm not going to go because it's a done deal. We know it's a done deal. So please don't make it a done deal. Give the people, those of us in the community, those of us who live there, that you talked about in your initial statement, this is our community, our lives. You have a job to do, and we have a job to do. So thank you.
I appreciate your well thought out statements and honesty, opinions. It was well stated. One thing I do want to leave everyone with, kind of a thought on something you mentioned about socioeconomic costs and talking about the business displaced. And, we consider that very strongly if we have to acquire a business. It's something we try to avoid. At every one of these intersections where we're putting in the roundabouts, we shifted the center of the roundabout one way or another, moved it to the other side of the road to try to find a solution that minimized property impacts to the greatest extent possible. We put a lot of work into that because we recognize it affects people's lives and disrupts businesses, employees, and we're well aware. But the other side of socioeconomic costs that we probably didn't really talk about tonight is injuries and crashes, right? And I put up all these metrics and statistics about crashes. Well, every time there's a crash, especially with an injury, you have responses from the fire department, the ambulance. They come out, they rescue somebody, try to help them, bring them to the hospital. Those are socioeconomic costs. There's a cost with every crash that occurs, cost on the city for responses, cost to that person, that family, if that person may have lost wages, was out of work, maybe has a permanent injury or disability. So that goes back to safety, and that's why we got started here tonight, all about safety. So just keep that in mind as part of the thoughts on tonight's meeting with cost and expense, and what's the cost of somebody getting hurt. Next comment, please.
Hi, I'm Nick Gallivan. My wife has a dance studio at 299 West Main Street. My concern was the state doesn't have enough. I know it's coming, and I agree there's a speed issue. So I must have heard the word speed 25 times tonight. What about an engineered speed bump? I've installed them on main roads where you can't go over 25 miles an hour, you get airborne. I mean, is it a lot cheaper and is worth trying it to slow down traffic? I know everybody's talking about speed. Now, we may not be, I know the left-hand turn's an issue, but it sure would definitely cut down on the accidents. And another thing, on the end of 82, where you're going to the city, I must see an accident twice a week there where they rear-end somebody because someone pulls out and a car's speeding the other way, and that guy stops and he bumps them. And it's not a bad accident, but slow down the speed, you take out them accidents, I think you cut your accidents right in half. So that was one thing I was thinking of because of that engineered speed bumps. You can make them 35 miles an hour, 25 miles, whatever you want. I've installed them. I know they work. I've seen it. Another thing is I'm concerned the state doesn't have enough thought for the business of Norwich, because not only you're taking 7 businesses, them 7 businesses can't relocate on that road because it's not available. There's nothing open there. You can afford anything on that strip. It's not like you showed pictures of roundabouts in, I don't know, it was Colorado or whatever, where business increased. It's not going to increase here because there's no more property. And not only them 7 businesses, now you're talking 2025 for phase 1. And I know how the things work with the state. It's going to take years for that project to go through. You're going to disrupt everything on that road. Now I'm going to avoid that, just like I avoid downtown Norwich right now. You're going to go one exit north or one exit south because everything you need is in Montville or it's in Lisbon. You're going to destroy Norwich. And my concern is I don't think the state cares enough about the local businesses. And that's basically what I had to say.
We heard it tonight, time and time again with people come up that commented. Most of the theme here tonight was businesses and concern for loss of businesses and employees, and just letting you know we did hear you. Thank you.
I grew up in Norwich 50 years, right on West Maple Street, right over there. And like the previous lady said, it's a community. And I don't think Norwich could stand it's losing 7 businesses. And that is huge, especially in these economic times. And the state says they want to help you relocate. One of the first questions the guy asked me, can you move out of Norwich? Can you relocate, the other day? I was like, I don't want to relocate out of Norwich. This is our community. I want to stay here. So that's another concern that, he didn't say, can we move you to Norwich? He said, can you move out of Norwich? I said, you got all the dance kids from Norwich. You want to keep them here. You don't want to go to another town. But anyways, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate all your feedback. Over here.
Hi, good evening. My name's Corey. One of the things you talked about was the progression through here. Have you considered in your design adding bus pull-offs? Because presently, right now, all the seat buses, they'll stop at any position on that road that somebody asked them to. You mentioned, okay, we're going to move a shelter 200 feet. But that's not the issue. The issue is those buses stop everywhere on the street. And if you have a single lane, what's the contingency? The other thing is, my other question for traffic is, where do we start necking down the roads? Washington Street to that first roundabout looks like a 2-lane road right now. Where do we start necking down and having to have that problem of merging into one lane to go through the roundabout?
Closer to Dunham Street, Maple Street.
You're on the other end. I'm talking Washington Street, right downtown, crossing a bridge by the modal transportation parking area that nobody uses, that you guys built.
Oh, that's the lane reduction is going to happen as you're coming into the Asylum Street intersection. So you've got 2 lanes coming up the hill as you're approaching Asylum Street. You're going to have left turning lanes, and it's just going to drop down into 1 lane as you approach the roundabout.
So,
and the reason is the roundabout operates so much more efficiently than the traffic signal. You just don't need the additional lanes.
okay, so at the bottom of that hill, we have a traffic light, so we're going to have a racetrack up to the roundabout, right? Right by the fire station, city fire station? We've got a traffic light.
Right.
You turn right, so so we're basically racing up the hill with your buddy. Okay. Last question is, who's going to maintain all that green space when you guys are done with it?
The green space, you talk about the center of the roundabouts?
The median with all the trees, the green space and the roundabouts.
Okay, so the median is predominantly going to be stamped concrete. That won't
Okay.
require maintenance. We are going to have street trees in the median at 100-foot spacing. They're fairly low maintenance. That's something that maybe once every 3 to 5 years you go out and do some pruning. Incredibly low maintenance. The center island of the roundabout, that's much bigger. That's designed, and we've coordinated that with Public Works and the city engineer, and we have a landscape architect on our team at DOT that's worked with them for the design to be low maintenance. It's not something that you have to go out and mow weekly or weed weekly. These are native type plantings that maybe require some annual maintenance and pruning.
So the answer to my question is the city's going to
The city will take care of it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Lois Strauss, and I've lived in Norwich all my life, and I live on New London Turnpike. So I do have some concerns because that's a very busy road. But my first question is, are there any signs on the roundabouts? Like, there's one in downtown Norwich, which I came across, I didn't even know it was there, going fairly slowly, and it said, yield, cars in Rotary have right-of-way. Yay, that was exactly what I needed to know, because if I learned it in driver's ed many years ago, I don't remember what I learned. I'm not even sure we learned it back then. So do any of these roundabouts have signs that help people know what to do?
Yes, as you're approaching the roundabout, there's actually going to be 2 yield signs, one on the left and one on the right at the crosswalk, and it'll say yield. And then in the roundabout itself, in the center island, there's a chevron sign that's kind of pointing you to the right, indicating turn right. In addition to that, on the pavement itself, there's going to be painted directional arrows.
But there's nothing that says, that lets every driver know that the cars that are already in there have the right-of-way.
Well, as you're approaching the roundabout, there's going to be a yield sign here, and 2 yield signs doubled up.
Okay, and when you had your little video up there, or whatever you want to call your diorama or whatever, and it showed the traffic going, I'm going to say north and south because I don't even know the direction, but didn't show much coming into the rotaries from the other sides. Occasionally a car went in. And those are side streets, and a lot of those streets are not busy streets. But when you get up to the whatever phase it is at New London Turnpike, you got a whole different situation. New London Turnpike is a crossroad in Norwich that takes you from one end of town to another, and it's a very busy street. And as someone pointed out earlier, when something happens on the highway, it comes on New London Turnpike and it gets backed up. Is that the last rotary, the corner of New London Turnpike and 82?
Yes, that would not happen until phase 2. That's another public information meeting and another
Well, that's a
time.
whole other thing. Why did you start at the end that you started with? This has probably got the most problems, but the traffic and the fire station, I mean, there'll be times when it'll be very difficult for cars to get into the rotary coming along New London Turnpike if the traffic is flowing the other way.
So the answer is we started Asylum and Mechanic Street first rather than going to New London Turnpike. So we're working from the east to the west rather than from the west to the east. And the reason is the traffic volumes are lower. Asylum Street and Mechanic Street, Osgood, Mount Pleasant, the volumes are lower. In that area, we can implement a road diet. We can go from 4 lanes down to 2 lanes, 1 lane in each direction. Those roundabouts will be single lane roundabouts. They're easier to build, they're more efficient, and it just makes sense for the public to get used to driving a single lane roundabout before we encroach on something more substantial down at New London Turnpike.
So we could get into this project, and it's going to get more complicated as we get to that last roundabout, correct?
It's going to have more lanes. It will not be 1 lane in each direction. It will have more lanes.
Okay. I guess it's a little unfortunate that we can't see the whole thing, because when you buy into something, you're only buying into, say, phase 1, but then we're into it. So I'm sure phase 2 is going to continue, follow through.
Well, there'll be additional discussions and public meetings on phase 2 and feedback and coordination with the city.
So we will get to see all the phases, the 2 phases before this is decided?
Well, tonight's discussion is on phase 1, primarily this section. There'll be another public meeting on this section at another time. These are independent projects. They won't be built together. This one's going to start in 2025. It's independent, it's standalone, okay. and this one would pick up in 2027 if it's agreed to move ahead with that. That's still at concept level, and there'll be another public
Okay.
meeting to discuss that another time.
One does not necessarily lead to the other. Phase 1, if we do that, it's possible that phase 2 would never happen?
It's possible. There's going to be public input and comment on that, just like we're having tonight on phase 1.
Okay.
And phase 2 is still at the concept level design. Like I told the man from Grader's Jewelers, we're not even 100% confident if he's going to be acquired yet or not. We're not done with the design down in those areas.
Thank you.
And just to add to that, phase 1, everything we've shown tonight has been designed independently of phase 2. If phase 2 never showed up, this is still independent utility, great benefit from our perspective.
So it's possible that phase 1 could get done, and as I said before, and phase 2 never gets done?
Yes.
Yes, because they're separate projects, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I was just hoping to get an answer to the gentleman here's question. He had talked about engineered speed bumps. Was that anything that was ever thought about? Not anything that's feasible, or?
You know, we'll take it back as part of the public comment period tonight, and we'll review it. Looking at some of the safety problems that we discussed tonight, I don't believe it's going to address vehicles making left turns in and out of the driveways. You know, you're trying to, remember that guy at Willow's Corner, we had the video, a 65-second wait time? You have 4 lanes of traffic, 2 lanes in each direction, with speed bumps, traffic down to 25 miles an hour, and you got to cross at least 3 lanes of traffic to get a gap to make a left out of that business. Probably going to be waiting a very long time. And, you know, we talked about environmental benefits, you know, and the roundabouts being yield control, traffic going, you know, pretty smooth. Once you interrupt, you know, the speed bumps, you get these jackrabbit start and stops. People go over the speed bump, they pound the gas, they accelerate till you get up to the next one. You know, there is a place for them, and they do work. You know, they're very effective on neighborhood streets with low volumes. And, you know, we'll consider it. It's part of the comment process tonight, but I don't see it addressing, this concern here, the safety issues that go with that.
I had a question regarding Phase 2. If Phase 2 is not a done deal and is completely separate from Phase 1, you go displace all these businesses, put all the businesses out of business because it's going to happen with the construction phases, and then decide not to do Phase 2, or the federal government cuts back on their funding, the flow of traffic is going to stop at Dunham Street because there's a light there. So what is the point of putting these roundabouts in when there's no guarantee that Phase 2 is going to happen to continue that flow of traffic down the road? That really makes no sense to do all this work and disrupt all these people when there's no guarantee of Phase 2.
The light at Dunham Street will still operate fine. It's the same flow of traffic. It's the same volume I have today, and you have a traffic light there now.
Right, but there's all the traffic lights that stagger the intervals of traffic going through there. Now it's going to be a steady flow to there, and then a giant backup there, and then cars trying to turn around with oncoming traffic from the other direction.
The vehicles will be more spaced out.
I
It'll be
highly
a more
doubt it.
even flow of traffic. They'll be more spaced out. There'll be larger gaps in traffic. If you look at Route 82 today and just stand there and, take some time away from your life and forget about your busy day and just watch traffic, what you'll notice is there's long periods of time where there's no traffic at times, one direction. There's no traffic coming because they're all stuck at the light. And it's building up, and the light has got some inefficiencies with it. And then all of a sudden the light turns green, and you get this large slug of traffic coming down the road because they were all stacked up at the light. And that's just a cycle that goes over and over again. When you implement the roundabout, you don't have the vehicle stopped for 45 seconds. It's just kind of a steady arrival and a steady flow.
You're going to where they come up by the city fire department, and then you're going to, again, at Dunham Street, so you're still creating that same flow. And what, 3/4 of a mile of area? You're going to have 2 lights. It's not going to solve
By the time they get in the roundabout quarter, they'll space out. The platooning will break up. You'll get a more steady flow of traffic with more gaps.
And when we look at the capacity analysis and look at the driving simulations, our traffic department looks at the whole corridor of Route 82 and the signals on either side of the roundabout. So that is something that we consider during our design.
I'm going to take this opportunity just to remind everyone again about our accessibility. So, on the front cover of the handout, we're all here. It's got our email, our phone number. My name again was Scott Bushy. I'm the project manager on the front of the handout. If anyone wants to talk with me tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, give me a call, send me an email. I can meet you at your business, your property. We can discuss your particular concerns one-on-one. I'm available through virtual calls, Teams, Zoom, email, phone, or at your property, and I'm very flexible. A lot of property owners along the corridor we've met with at nights. Whatever you need, I'm here. It's not just tonight is the only time to work with us. The project team is accessible all the time. We want to hear from you. And that same level of commitment will go through the construction process as well with our community liaison, our website, and availability to reach out to DOT and talk about what's happening, what's working, what's not working, what your business needs. Any more comments tonight? So, ma'am, do you have a comment? So I want to thank everyone.
Thank you. Just a brief comment after listening to everything. Originally, Route 82 was 2 lanes. It increased to 4, and a lot of that was based upon the growth that happened on that turnpike. A lot of new businesses came in. When I look at the Willow Street shot that you did, I see the same thing that I experience every time I go down Route 82, whether the lights are green or whether they turn red. Those lanes are pretty well filled up. If we shrink the 4 lanes down to a single lane, it may end up increasing some issues even without the traffic lights there. And secondly, in the long run, wouldn't that end up being an economic crimp to future development of the city, especially as we look at things like Preston Riverwalk coming in and other such things. How do we end up dealing with an increased traffic flow for more commercial business to come into the city? Thank you.
Mike, can you go to the VSIM simulation that was part of Mike Larice's presentation? You know, we're talking about single lanes and traffic flow, and in response to that, I just want to put up the traffic simulation that we brought with us again tonight. You know, if you take a look at this, here's the signalized intersection. You know, the traffic's queuing up, it's backing, it crosses some of the driveways. People want to get to the driveways, they can't. And that's because of the stop condition. The same amount of traffic is in the roundabout. That's the same time of day, the same amount of traffic. The difference is just that the roundabout works more efficiently. You have concurrent movements, multiple legs being able to enter the intersection and go at the same time. And that level of efficiency is what allows you to go down to a single lane. And if you look at these two videos side by side, what you're noticing, it almost looks like there's less cars, but there's not. It's the same amount of cars. It's just that they're moving through the intersection much more efficiently. I think you'll also notice that there's more gaps. It's certainly going to be easier to drive. You know, right out of the driveway, go down the U-turn, go down the roundabout, make a U-turn. Any more comments tonight, guys? I want to thank you again for allowing us here, you know, the use of this beautiful facility, you know, the Kelly Magnet School for allowing us here, and their tech guys for supporting us for the 4 hours of this meeting. And again, special thanks to Mayor Nystrom for suggesting this facility for holding the meeting. It was really a wonderful experience here to be able to do this with you guys. Okay, just a reminder about the comments, and then on the back of the handout, if you want to email us, there is an email address on the back of the handout. Inside the handout, there's a stuff form. It's already addressed. You can fold it, put a stamp on it, throw it in the mail, and then if you want to speak with me one-on-one about, you know, your property concerns, business concerns, my name is Scott Bushy. My email and phone number is here. Have a good night, everyone, and, you know, thank you for your patience and opening us, inviting us into your home tonight. We appreciate that. Thank you.